reports that come. Turn me on to it, you know, the technology wizard next to me.
Yeah, right.
He is high-tech Linda.
Good morning. I call to order the annual meeting of the Board of Regents of the University of Minnesota. Item number 1 is establishment of meeting dates for 2014 and 15. In your docket, you'll find proposed meeting dates for 14 and 15. Before I call for a motion, however, I would like to suggest one adjustment. Last year, we experimented with moving the March meeting to the end of the month. That worked well, in my opinion, and the administration has asked us to do that again. So therefore, I'm proposing the March 2015 meeting be held on the March 26th time slot rather than March 12th or 13th. If there's support for the meeting schedule, including the change I just recommended, I would entertain a motion to approve that.
Second.
There is a motion and second. Is there any discussion? Regent Frobenius.
That may get impacted by the region change occurring. Probably the 1st of March, you're not going to have the legislature done, and by the end of March, you will. So
Yes, and that was
several of us out of our last week, so that's fine.
Regent Simmons.
Thanks, Chair Beeson. I assume that you've looked at the holidays that occur in March, April to make sure that there's no problem with that.
And I think part of the thought, going back to Regent Frobenius, was 2 years ago, the first meeting of the newly elected board was the day after the election, and this would give some space to them before the first meeting. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. And I will now therefore adjourn the annual meeting and call to order the regular meeting of the Board of Regents. We're beginning today's meeting with several recognitions. I'll start by recognizing this year's student representatives to the Board of Regents. President Kaler, would you please join me at the podium? Well, the student representatives fulfill a very important role in bringing the student voice to the board's deliberations, and we appreciate the perspectives and thoughtful comments on topics before the board throughout the year. I'm going to tell you a little bit about each representative and ask them to come to the podium individually for a photo, and then stay up here, if you would, for a group photo of all the representatives at the conclusion. First is Megan Mason. We call you Professor at this point. Okay. Megan's a graduate student originally from State College, Pennsylvania, and she's completing her second term as a student rep, first as chair. And Megan will be finishing her dissertation this summer for her PhD in epidemiology from the School of Public Health. She's also now an assistant professor in public health at St. Catherine's University in St. Paul, developing their evening, weekend, and online curriculum for the undergraduate public health program, and looking forward to starting research activities in Bolivia and Zambia on infectious diseases transmitted by stray dogs. It's fascinating. So, Megan, congratulations. And okay, Joy Dankowitz, come on up. Well, Joy's a senior from Woodbury. He's finishing his first term as student rep and served as one of the 2 vice chairs. He graduated this spring with a degree in mathematics, and Joy's got an interesting career path and some options and opportunities working in the community organizing area, and we'll be focusing on some writing and research projects. Eventually, I'd like to come back to hopefully the U. The graduate school side and get into higher education administration. That's there's a lot of need there. So we welcome you back. You've got a little experience too. So thanks, Joey, very much. Kevin Lang. Kevin and I were kind of seated together throughout the last year or two a lot, so gotten fun to get acquainted. Kevin's the vice chair of the Twin Cities GAPSA, and he's a graduate student, of course. He's originally from Le Sueur. He's completing his first term as a student rep and served as one of 2 vice chairs. He's pursuing a PhD in comparative and molecular biosciences in the College of Veterinary Medicine. Kevin, thanks for all your work here. Ben Metcalf is not here today. He's out of Rochester. He's a senior, originally from Kenyon, Minnesota. He's completing his first term as a student rep. He's pursuing a Bachelor of Science in Health Sciences and will continue to work toward his degree next year. And same with John Ryko, who's out of the Twin Cities Minnesota Student Association. John's from St. Cloud, completing his first term as a student rep. He was just elected student body vice president of the Twin Cities campus. He's a student in the Carlson School of Management studying finance. Joelle Stangler, come on up, Joelle. Junior, originally from Rogers, Minnesota. She's completing her first term as student rep, and she was recently elected as student body president of the Twin City campus, so that's a big job. In addition to your studies, and you've been focusing on political science and government in the College of Liberal Arts. Thanks for your leadership, and good luck. And we'll get a group photo, I think, now. Oh, we've got Hannah. Hannah. And come on up, Hannah, while I'm introducing Hannah. I'll also acknowledge Drew Underdahl from Crookston. She can't make it today. She graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Ag Business and minored in agronomy. She did start a new job in May with the Green Plains Renewable Energy as a commodity procurement trainee out in Fergus Falls. So we'll send her our congratulations. Hannah, who's a junior from Plymouth, is finishing her first year as student rep. She's a student in the Labowitz School of Business and Economics, studying finance and HR. You're pretty busy on the athletic fields too, and soccer. So congratulations to that set of activities. Thanks very much, Hannah.
Come on up here, guys. Is it Hannah? Come on, Hannah, come on up. There you go. Let's get everybody around. Yep, come on up. Step on up. There you go. And actually, I have you right there. There, perfect. Nice. We'll do about 3 more. They're easy ones. They're easy ones. Thank you.
Mr. Chair and members of the board, it's now my honor to recognize Cynthia Murdoch. Cynthia, please come join me at the podium. Cynthia is an analyst in our Enterprise Portal project, and she is the outgoing chair of the P&A Consultative Committee. She was instrumental in assuring that there was a good P&A presence in the strategic planning process and that information about the process has been fully communicated to the P&A Senate and its constituents. She also ensured that the job family study concerns and feedback from the P&A classification were conveyed to the Office of Human Resources. She has been a diligent leader for our P&A employees, and I thank you, Cynthia, for your outstanding service. Thank you so much. And while Cynthia does that, I would also like to recognize the good work over the past year of Tom Sondrial, who's a senior media producer at the University of Minnesota Crookston, who's led the Civil Service Consultative Committee, and he unfortunately cannot be with us today, but we thank him for his service.
Next item is approval of the minutes. I would entertain a motion and a second.
So move.
The last meeting's minutes. Regent Devine moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Regent Cohen, a second. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Not hearing any, will all those in favor say aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And report of the President. Good morning, President Kaler. Would you share your report?
Thank you, Chair Beeson, members of the board. If you didn't notice, this morning it's Friday the 13th. And despite that, I feel pretty lucky. For one, since we last met, we concluded a successful legislative session. With this board's help over the past 3 years, our partnership with the legislature and the governor has been strengthened, and we've developed a good level of trust with our legislative leaders. I think you all know the details of the results of this session, and I thank our government relation team and many others at the U for their tireless efforts. And I also thank the governor, the legislature, and most importantly, the hundreds of members of our Legislative Action Network for their support. Secondly, we're today poised for you to approve, I hope, a strategic and responsible budget that will freeze tuition once more for Minnesota resident undergraduates. It's very important to our students, their families, and all of us that we strive to provide affordable and inclusive academic excellence across all 5 of our campuses. And thirdly, after returning last weekend from donor visits on behalf of the University of Minnesota Foundation, I'm pleased to announce that we are set to post one of the very top fundraising years ever as the economy continues to recover. And that comes on the heels of a visit I made last week to the President's Club Heritage Society at their annual dinner, where I announced that 2,000 of our most committed and generous friends have pledged to us more than $600 million in future gifts. $600 million to aid our students, their families, and our faculty in the years to come. It's really a remarkably deep signal of affection for and confidence in this university. And finally, I add to that the 15,000 university graduates on our 5 campuses who in the past month prepared to move into the state's and the nation's workforce. So indeed, I'm feeling pretty lucky to be the president of the U. Of course, it is hard work that makes for luck, and it's hard work by many of our faculty, students, and staff that's gotten here. For example, across the university, we've been working hard on sustainability issues, but our Morris campus has been our leader and a national leader. It was announced recently that Morris was awarded a Climate Leadership Award by Second Nature, a national nonprofit that works to create a healthy and sustainable society by transforming higher education. Only 20 campuses across the country were honored for their exceptional work, and Morris won the most votes among those institutions that award only bachelor's degrees. So congratulations to the entire Morris community for its long-term and continuing commitment to teaching, researching, and living sustainability. Speaking of which, I spent a whirlwind 2.5 days in Xi'an, China last month with our esteemed mechanical engineering professor, David Pui, and a collection of scientists and researchers from the U and a handful of Minnesota's most innovative industry partners. We met with Chinese scientific and government leaders on the extremely critical issue of air pollution in China. We're the only university in the world that was invited by Chinese officials to discuss creative ideas pioneered by Professor Pui to address China's PM 2.5 air quality crisis. That's a situation in which particulate pollution, 2.5 microns or smaller, causes critical problems. And it's an example of the grand challenges we're confronting every day in our classrooms and our laboratories, and it's a nice statement about the global reputation of our faculty in this university. Our reputation's also attracting the nation's top high school students. I'm very pleased to have heard yesterday from Vice Provost and Dean of Undergraduate Education Bob McMaster that we will welcome 141 National Merit Scholars to the university this coming fall. That's more than last year, more than the University of California at Berkeley, just saying, and far more than some of our peers such as Texas or Wisconsin. It's exciting, and it's a reflection of our commitment to academic excellence. We're also working hard to ensure that our human subjects research is world-class. Last week, we finalized a contract with a nationally respected independent expert firm to logistically manage the process of examining our current policies, practice, and oversight of clinical research. That's in response to a faculty Senate resolution about research on human subjects. We are all deeply committed to maintaining the highest standards in our research practices involving human subjects so that our researchers can continue to pursue their life-changing work to benefit society. On another front, we've been working hard with faculty, staff, and students on a new smoke-free, tobacco-free policy set to begin on our Twin Cities campus on July 1st. You know, I want to be clear about this. We're not really interested in being the cigarette police in this space, but our goal is to make this campus and all of our campuses eventually as healthy as possible through cessation classes and a smoke-free environment to aid those who are addicted to tobacco. And of course, we have worked hard on the Green Line opening, which will come tomorrow and enhance the accessibility and charm of our urban Twin Cities campus. So the train is finally leaving. I'm grateful to all who have conducted themselves tirelessly for many, many years to bring us to this day. And now we will continue to focus on safety as 98-ton trains move nearly continuously through our campus. Our communication plan around safety has been laid out, and it will pick up steam considerably as students, faculty, and staff return to campus in the fall. And finally, as the academic and fiscal year ends, we're in the process of thanking and honoring many deserving employees for their exceptional contributions and years of service, as we did with Cynthia this morning. So let me tell you about a phone call we received in my office a few weeks back that demonstrates the impact of operational excellence, employee engagement, good old-fashioned customer relations, and pride in one's work. So Laura Wegscheid in my office received a call from a 1981 alum. He told Laura the following things. He said that he was having trouble registering online for a political science class he wanted to audit. That he spoke with someone named John Sill at our one-stop student service office on the St. Paul campus. That Mr. Sill went above and beyond to make several calls to department offices to help him navigate and resolve the issue, and that he was impressed by John's professionalism and the wonderful service he provided to him. So here's the kicker. I like this. The caller said that later this fall, when he sends his yearly donation to the university, he will increase it in honor of John Sill's great service. So that, members of the board, is not luck. That is one example of the hard work and exceptional service that thousands of our employees provide every day. And it underscores, to me, the importance of ensuring that every interaction we have with students, parents, alumni, and taxpayers has outcomes and reflects on the values of this university. So we are lucky, and I am grateful for having such committed employees. And John Sill is with us today. John, if you would stand up and be recognized, please. Thank you, John. And by the way, John has to run off right now to Spicer, Minnesota. Regent Johnson knows where that is. To meet with the caterer and the pastor for its forthcoming wedding. So, John, you can take the rest of the day off. And on that high note, I conclude my report. I will now distribute my accomplishments for the past academic and fiscal year and wish you all a very pleasant and uneventful rest of Friday the 13th. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Kaler. I'd like to begin my comments addressing a recent report issued by the Institute for Policy Studies, which contained misleading and erroneous information. This report and much of the resulting media coverage, including that of local outlets, was a disservice to the universities that singled out and did not add to the important public discourse about higher education. Next, I'd like to mention some events that the Regents have participated in since our last meeting in May, and there have been quite a number. I'll give you the highlights if you'll permit me. The Steele Prize for Excellence in Agriculture, the President's Heritage Club Society Dinner, the Kirby Puckett Scholarship Program Dinner, and of course 29 commencements throughout the state of Minnesota across our 5 campuses. In late May, Regents Broad, Devine, Johnson, Lucas, Omari, and I spent 2 days in southern Minnesota visiting the Dairy Education Center, the Southern Research and Outreach Center, and the Hormel Institute. On Thursday, we toured the Dairy Education Center in St. Peter, where the College of Veterinary Medicine and the Davis family dairies have created a really wonderful partnership. And we saw the birth of a live calf almost the moment we walked in. The center integrates its academic and business missions with practical student learning and research in the same space as a high-quality commercial dairy. We also toured the 926-acre Southern Research and Outreach Center in Waseca and met with faculty, staff, and industry collaborators conducting research to find efficient and effective food productive practices. Finally, on Friday, we made a visit to the Hormel Institute in Austin, which had just broken ground in a major expansion and continues to be a world leader in cancer research. We learned a great deal at each stop and are grateful for the time and effort that went into organizing our visit, both from our staff and those in those communities. Finally, I'd like to report on the work of the Presidential Performance Review Committee, which consisted of Vice Chair Dean Johnson, Regent Dave McMillan, and myself. The committee met on May 9th and May 27th. Then on June 11th, the committee met with President Kaler to discuss the report. As provided in Minnesota statutes, these meetings were closed. The report has now been provided to each of you, but I'd like to highlight a few items and then invite Regent Johnson to make a few comments, followed by Regent McMillan, and if any of the other regents wish to add to those comments, I'll recognize them as well. President Kaler continues to demonstrate exceptional performance. He's passionate, energetic, and eager to ambitiously transform the University of Minnesota to meet the grand challenges facing our society, while also addressing the need to evolve our business model to one that can adapt with the rapidly transforming world of higher education. Though the planning process is still underway, as we know, the idea of leveraging the university's depth, breadth, and location to solve the grand challenges of our time is both inspiring and compelling. President Kaler has assembled a highly talented senior management team who's charged with implementing key elements of the plan. Individually, they're strong performers, but collectively they have the potential to set the university on an even more ambitious and visionary path. It's critical for this team to function in concert with one another in support of the President's agenda. In short, President Kaler is the right person for this job at the right time and has the potential to lead the university to preeminence in teaching, research, and outreach. We're glad to have you here, President Kaler. Congratulations on a really strong start during your first 3 years. I believe President Kaler's strong performance warrants an extension of his contract, and I plan to have conversations about that over the next couple of weeks with our colleagues and bring forward my recommendation to the board. Dean Johnson, Regent Cheney.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, President Kaler, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to be part of the committee that had the opportunity to visit with some of you, senior leadership of the university, students, and community leaders. Mr. President, I will tell you that you're well-loved, well-liked in the state of Minnesota as president of this great university. 3 brief points, if I might. The academic medicine, and I've often said that the medical community of the university is one of the major front doors of this great institution. And your work, as you're working on the AHC, strongly aligns with the board's priorities and will benefit students and the citizens of this state for years to come. And it was noted by many of the people that I visited with. Second of all, you created a new environment and a new energy surrounding the legislative process. You well know the number of times you and your staff went to St. Paul to meet with the governor, legislative leaders, respective leaders, and the end result was this university was the recipient of that, both in funding as well as in the bonding bill. And you created a new atmosphere, new environment within the legislative process. Members of the legislature on both sides of the aisle, in the House and the Senate, they trust you, they like you, and that spells nothing but good fortune for this university. Finally, the individuals that I visited with, again, extremely positive about your presidency as you steer the ship of this university. We are pleased that you are our president. You're a very stable force, you're thoughtful, and yes, indeed, hardworking. You spend your waking hours on behalf of this university, you and Mrs. Kaler, and we're appreciative of that. I sum it up by a comment from a student. How can we not like this university and learn here that President Kaler is president of, and we're appreciative of all that you have done and continue to do for us. And we thank you for being our president. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Johnson. Regent McMillan.
Thank you, Chair Beeson, and a couple other points that I want to highlight, noting also that I've had the fortune and the privilege of serving on this committee 2 years in a row now, so much of what I've heard from you and what I have to say is reflective of more than just 1 year's feedback. Most importantly, I think President Kaler continues to have an aggressive and very sustained focus on greater efficiency. We're starting to see the impact of that, not only with the 90 million goal, but how he's realizing that. It's also reflected in the strategic plan as he used words like, or they've adopted words like rejecting complacency. So across the university, inside and out, that's being noticed, and it isn't easy, but you're the leader we need to keep that going forward. Another piece that I'd highlight would be your partnership in philanthropy, and that's the term that I hear from the folks that are out fundraising, that you are truly considered a partner, not something that you need to be cajoled into doing, but something you gladly, willingly, and finding 20% of your time in a schedule is something I don't know how you do. Very importantly, we want to recognize as well the incredibly important contribution your wife Karen makes. She too is a partner on behalf of this university and is out every day with you sometimes and without you sometimes, driving forward to do good things for the state and the university. Just a couple other thoughts about your leadership style. You also rise to challenges, good and bad. The uptick in crime was something that you didn't delegate. You jumped in yourself, and that's reflective of your leadership style. And lastly, I think you're, and this is feedback that we got from people we talked to, very open and learning when it comes to constructive feedback about things you're doing well and things you could do better. So all excellent characteristics of a great leader. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent McMillan. Regent Devine.
I'd like to just say, Mr. Chair and President Kaler, I won't reiterate what my two colleagues have just already said, but only to add, I also want to really publicly recognize your accessibility to the students here at the University of Minnesota. I think that that's been remarkable, your access, the reporters that come and visit you from the Minnesota Daily, your use of the social media. Those conversations that you had, I think, are valued by the student population as a whole, and it's something that I think is really been wonderful. It's a wonderful turn here. And then finally, I'd also like to just note our deep appreciation for your wife Karen's work, both in her volunteer activities here at the university and her accompaniment with you on the many, many events that you attend. It's deeply appreciated, and I want you to know that I think we all really have been pleased and are honored to have your wife serve in such a dramatic role that she's played with the university.
Regent Frobenius.
Thank you, Chair Beeson. I want to add my voice to my colleagues in support of your evaluation and your performance at the U. I believe this board and this community value the strong leadership that you have provided. You take on key and important and difficult issues with skill, with passion, and with understanding. You have an excellent level of energy, excellent problem-solving skills, planning skills, and communication skills. All of what is said, in my mind, is sort of summarized with one generality, and that's the U, its students, and its faculty, as well as the state of Minnesota, are much better as a result of your presence and your leadership. Thank you.
Thank you.
Regent Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. President, you're still fairly new around here, so people around the state continue to ask, how's the president doing? And you don't have time in a case like that to go through and iterate all of the items that have just been talked about, which I agree with 100%. So my answer is a very simple one. He came with very high expectations, and he is exceeding them all. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Regent Johnson.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's also important to acknowledge the President's staff, Chief of Staff Amy Phoenix and all the folks that assist him, and we also want to acknowledge Brian Steves, who assisted our committee in the drafting of this performance review. And we want to acknowledge those hardworking folks on a day-to-day basis as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Johnson and colleagues, for all those comments, and most of all, President Kaler, for the first 3 years of outstanding work here at the university. And we look forward to working with you for many years to come.
So do I, Chair Beeson. Thank you.
I think it deserves a round of applause.
Well, back to more perfunctory matters then. Let's look at item number 5. We receiving and filing reports. We have a report of the Academic Professionals and Administrators Consultative Committee. I believe, is that next? Yes, a report of the Civil Service Consultative Committee and quarterly reports of grant and contract activity. Those are in there for your information. Item number 6, the consent report, yes, going to item number 6, Regents Professor recommendation and report of the All University Honors Committee. Any discussion on those items? Regent Simmons.
Move approval.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. Any discussion on that? Not hearing any. Would all those in favor say aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carries. Thank you. Professor Durfee. Good morning, and please join us to present the report of the Faculty Consultative Committee.
Chair Beeson, members of the board, President Kaler, this is the third and last of the academic year reports provided by the Faculty Consultative Committee Chair to the Board of Regents. You have my written report, which is in the docket materials, and rather than reading that document, I'd like to hit some of the highlights and then provide a few additional comments. First, graduate education. I know I'm sounding like a broken record because all 3 times I've reported to you, I've talked about graduate education. Why? Because graduate education is directly linked to the quality and reputation of a university. As you know, the Special Graduate Education Committee highlighted aspects of our program that require attention and provided a set of recommendations. At the May board meeting, the provost presented an organizational plan for post-baccalaureate programs that clearly separates post-baccalaureate professional programs from research-oriented graduate programs. Faculty support this plan. The organizational plan is just the beginning. Significant work remains and will be conducted by a joint effort of faculty and administration. For example, critically important is developing a long-term plan based on a set of guiding principles to determine graduate program tuition. This is not a simple problem, and the thought process must be different than that used for setting undergraduate tuition. Equally difficult is the strategy for determining professional degree tuition. My understanding is that the board will be taking a deeper look at graduate education in the coming year and faculty governance fully supports and applauds this focus. Over the past 10 years, the university has made remarkable improvements to its undergraduate program, and the time has come to do the same for its graduate program. This coming year will be an exciting one for the Twin Cities campus because we'll start implementing the strategic plan that's due to emerge in September. Because faculty have been heavily engaged in that plan, forming the majority of the work group and the majority of the 5 issues groups, the plan will automatically have relevance to faculty. One example of work ahead for faculty may include examining our liberal education requirements and student learning outcomes to determine if they align with what we expect of students who are capable of tackling grand challenges. Another is working with administration to create a financial system that rewards experiments in new curriculum that crosses traditional department and college boundaries while still paying the bills. The goals described in the plan will mean continuing to support our graduate program because without excellent graduate students, you won't get good faculty, and without good faculty, you won't get good graduate students. Implementing the goals will also mean taking a hard look at how we approach affirmative action in faculty recruiting, because you cannot expect to land the field-shaping teachers and researchers unless the university is seen as a place where all faculty feel welcome. Faculty are looking forward to starting and continuing the dialogue that will be triggered by the strategic plan. Frequently, board members ask, how can the board help the faculty? I'd like to present a very concrete way that you can help the faculty. The university is not alone among institutions of higher education in that it is facing significant and daunting challenges with no easy solution. At yesterday's discussion on student housing, Regent Johnson reminded us of one of the most difficult, which is the untenable situation of rising student debt, rising cost of education, and declining support of public universities by the very public they must serve. I recognize that faculty are embedded in the problem because university expenses are driven by labor costs, and my salary, along with the salaries of my fellow faculty, are a big part of that cost. I have no idea how to solve this problem. Some universities tried to solve it by hiring more part-time faculty who can deliver education at a lower cost per student rate. I don't think this would be a good approach for the University of Minnesota. What I do know is that solutions to problems of this magnitude require administration and faculty working together. So my request to the board is that as you analyze proposed solutions to high-stakes challenges such as this one, to always ask, what does this approach mean for the faculty? And further, in your oversight role, I ask that you continue to monitor and ensure that major academic decisions made by the university are a result of a collaboration between faculty and administration. Next year, FCC will be ably led by Rebecca Ropers-Human, Professor and Chair of the Department of Organizational Leadership, Policy and Development in the College of Education and Human Development. The FCC Vice Chair will be Chris Eugen, Professor in the Department of Sociology, College of Liberal Arts. Both split the duties of Vice Chair this year, so both have experience in leadership roles. FCC will be in excellent hands, and the board will benefit from their wisdom. I would like to finish my remarks with a story. In a meeting several weeks ago, Regent Johnson turned to me and asked if the faculty of Minnesota were happy, if they looked forward to coming to work every day, and if they were proud to be at the University of Minnesota. A big question that I wasn't sure how to answer. I remember responding that I could not speak for all 3,000 faculty, but in general I thought the answer was yes, even though faculty being faculty, you'll always get a minority who are not satisfied about something. Today, Regent Johnson, I will answer your question by telling you why I look forward to coming to work every day and why I feel privileged to be a faculty member at the University of Minnesota. Those of you attending the Academic and Student Affairs Committee yesterday heard my colleague Tim Keogh, co-leader of the Strategic Planning Issues Team on recruiting and retaining field-shaping researchers and teachers, float the phrase, the University of Opportunity, as a way to describe what can differentiate the U from our peers. It comes from the Strategic Plan Foundation that realizes that our unique strength is the combination of our breadth and our location in a major metropolitan area. Here's one of hundreds of examples of what is meant by the University of Opportunity. 2 days ago, a cognitive psychologist, an apparel designer, and a mechanical engineer gathered to deliver a half-day workshop on human factors to a select group from the internal product design team at Target Corporation. The Target attendees included designers who specialize in sporting accessories, children's garments, party goods, patio furniture, even disposable baby diapers. They were there to learn from experts how to design products for effective, efficient, and safe use. The cognitive psychologist, Dr. Kathleen Harder, directs the Center for Design and Health. You have been impacted by her work because she is the one who advised MnDOT on how to achieve clear and consistent messaging on overhead electronic roadway signs. Yesterday, Regent Devine was recalling risks in the past of undergoing complex surgeries. Regent Devine, you'll be relieved to know that surgeries in Minnesota are even safer because every hospital in the state recently implemented Dr. Harder's recommended procedures for avoiding wrong side surgeries. In the workshop, she discussed the cognitive processes that go on when people select and use products. The apparel designer, Dr. Lucy Dunn, is a professor in the Department of Design, Housing, and Apparel. Her expertise is wearable technology, and her PhD is in computer science. She can both cut and sew a dress shirt and program an app for your smartphone. At the workshop, she described basic principles of human factors in clothing, including the intricacies of fit and the emotional conflict that arises in choosing between clothes you should be wearing and clothes that are in line with the latest trend. In addition, she used human factors examples from spacesuits on her mind because the day before she had been in Houston advising a NASA team on designing suits that were easier to move around in. The mechanical engineer was me, and I explained to the group about fundamentals of muscle physiology and human neural control systems so that product designers could understand the reasons why there are gears on bicycles and why it is harder to maneuver a jug of milk that is in the back of your refrigerator compared to when it is in the front. The workshop was a success, and we immediately started discussing how to strengthen the connections between the U and Target, which will likely include more university student interns at Target, more Target projects in our project-based design courses, Target employees in our graduate human factors program, and research projects where we can use Target design experts as our data set. This exemplifies the University of Opportunity. It happened because we are one of the very few academic institutions with excellence in cognitive psychology, apparel, and engineering. Among those, we're likely the only university with the world headquarters of a Fortune 500 company just a few light rail stops away. So, Regent Johnson, it is experiences like that which bring home for me how special the University of Minnesota is and how the opportunities it affords will continue to attract top quality faculty. Chair Beeson, that concludes my remarks, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Professor Durfee. Any questions, comments from the board? Thank you. Would you join us at the podium for a certificate and some comments?
So following his final report, it's now my pleasure to honor Professor Will Durfee, the outgoing chair of the Faculty Consultative Committee, which, as you know, serves as the executive committee of the Faculty Senate. Will has been a steady and strong partner this past year. He's a smart, savvy, and very principled leader. No drama is a very good thing for someone whose life scholarship and work is to design innovative medical devices, and I assure you it is a very welcome quality in the leader of the FCC. Will has been an effective and absolutely no drama FCC chair through what has been an interesting year. For that and your excellent service, Professor Durfee, I thank you very much, and I celebrate the report you just gave. It's a wonderful insight into the faculty world and a very valuable window for the board to see this important university. So thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, President Kaler, and it's my pleasure to read this certificate. Will, on behalf of my colleagues, the Regents of the University of Minnesota, Certificate Appreciation, William K. Durfee. The Regents of the University of Minnesota recognize with great appreciation the exceptional achievements and dedication of Professor William K. Durfee, 2013-14 Chair of the Faculty Consultative Committee and the Senate Consultative Committee. As chair during this past year, Professor Durfee has been an advocate for faculty while providing effective leadership and consultation with the President, senior leaders, and the Board of Regents. He was integrally involved in the Twin Cities Campus Strategic Planning Initiative and collaborated with the Provost in charging a special committee to explore the future of graduate education. Most notably, Professor Durfee thoughtfully engaged his colleagues in a dialogue to create a more effective and efficient consultative model and skillfully led difficult topics through governance process. The University of Minnesota has benefited greatly from Professor Durfee's strong and steady leadership, and we're deeply grateful for your integrity, your commitment, and contributions to the greater good. On behalf of the entire university community, the Regents of the University of Minnesota express their deepest gratitude to Professor William Durfee for his outstanding accomplishments and remarkable dedication and service this 13th day of June 2014. Congratulations, Will Durfee. Next, I'd like to invite up Megan Mason to the table to present the report of the student representatives. Megan?
Thank you, Chair Beeson. Members of the board, President Kaler, this group of students behind me has been absolutely remarkable to work with this year. So anything in this report is certainly not just my own doing. And these students have been great for generating new ideas, sharing our different academic experiences, and learning about other campus environments as well. And I think that this has really helped us to realize our goal of bringing issues to the board that are truly system-wide and influenced by the undergraduate, graduate, and professional student bodies. As you have read, our report focuses on the themes of financial literacy, systemness, as well as a short update from our fall report on the sexual assault piece. I will admit that at first I was hesitant that there was interest among the student representatives to talk about financial literacy. I thought you'd probably heard enough about the student growing debt load, rising tuition costs, and student fee issues. But as I began to understand, the issue of student financial literacy goes far beyond understanding the dollar amount of a degree. Financial decisions made during a student's educational career influence their ability to repay their debts, the size of their savings account, and the value of their credit score. Moreover, these decisions impact their time to graduation, their ability to be economic consumers, and their decision to pursue additional degrees leading to their ultimate career path. In short, students must remain cognizant of the long-term financial impacts of financial choices made while they're on campus. We know that only 48% of high school seniors around the country have basic financial literacy skills with respect to income, money management, saving and investing, spending, and credit. This means that the majority of students coming to college campuses lack the information they need to make educated financial decisions. These deficiencies are also most prevalent among vulnerable student populations, often of low income and particular racial backgrounds. And given that financial literacy is associated with student academic success, it's a very prudent investment for the university in the area of student financial literacy. So the good news is that the University of Minnesota is already being proactive about this topic. There's an article referenced in your docket material by Thomas Harnish that outlines 10 recommendations for institutions of higher education with respect to financial literacy programming. We have in place at least 3 of these already: a campus-wide financial literacy program, the use of social media campaigns, and free online training modules available to students. But these efforts can certainly be strengthened and expanded. And one example that I'd like to highlight is from the University of Minnesota Duluth, where they've been working particularly hard on their Live Like a Student campaign. This seeks to educate students on the cornerstones of personal finance, including borrowing, saving, and the use of credit, with the ultimate goal of behavior change among the student population in those areas. Although both UMD and the Twin Cities campus have online resources for the Live Like a Student program, UMD also has a financial literacy counselor who speaks to classes and groups whenever she is given the invitation and schedules appointments with students to see her individually. She may discuss how financial decisions add up over time, the cost of school, the rules of borrowing, debt to salary repayment comparisons, and how to monitor your student loan debt. Another critical element of the UMD campaign is that it reaches students through social media, including an easy-to-use comprehensive website, a Facebook page, and a Twitter account. Examples of these are provided in figures 1 and 2 of your docket materials. And these channels of instant information not only reinforce the messages of the financial literacy counselor, but also provide tips and tools to students in the moment when they're making those financial decisions to help them make wise choices about spending and saving. Another great financial literacy effort here on the Twin Cities campus is the recommended Buttonwood training for our incoming freshmen. Students do this as part of their pre-orientation online, and 3 out of 4 incoming freshmen completed the course this year. Of these students, 75% said they found the information helpful, 45% told family members about something they learned, and 60% said that it introduced them to new financial skills. This suggests that students are eager to engage in activities and conversations about financial literacy if they're given the opportunity. On the graduate and professional student side, improvements in financial literacy around the specific issue of student debt is most needed. As Professor Durfee mentioned, we're glad to hear that issues of graduate student tuition are on the table, hopefully in the upcoming years for the board. More than half of our graduate students pay some money out of pocket for their current degree, and 13% contribute more than $10,000. According to the 2013 Council of Graduate Students survey, only about 59% of graduate students received at least 3/4 of the funding towards their degree, and only 27% have those funds guaranteed upon arrival. That leaves students to have to fill in these gaps with teaching or research appointments, grants, and loans. If there's other expenses that occur, this could increasingly turn students towards credit cards as a way to absorb that debt. It's not so much the issue of having to take on the debt, but that only 20% of our students have received any sort of debt-related counseling. So this leaves a huge gap in knowledge for a large portion of our graduate student population. Therefore, our recommendations for expanding financial literacy resources across the university system include, but are not limited to, institutionalization of the Live Like a Student initiative throughout the entire university system, broadening of the Buttonwood training agreement to include other system campuses apart from the Twin Cities, and at the graduate and professional level, a deeper discussion about tuition philosophies and debt counseling. So as we were formulating the financial literacy piece of our report, it was clear that the experiences and opportunities for students on each of the campuses were different from one another. We recalled the conversation at the October Academic and Student Affairs Committee meeting, where the distinctive mission of each campus was addressed. One of the sets of questions posed to the committee was, when are we one and when are we many? Our experience as student representatives has always been to act as one voice, not many, and we began to explore how other students, not fortunate enough to be in our position, might experience the University of Minnesota beyond the grounds of their own respective campuses. We tried to identify at least one example of existing cross-campus opportunities in each of the 3 areas of the university mission. In the area of teaching and learning, Rochester students may elect to study abroad within the university system. This part of their capstone project, one option is to use the time to take additional coursework to further master their experience in a particular subject on a different campus with different expertise. So many Rochester students come to the Twin Cities perhaps to complete a minor in public health or other areas. Through working with experts in these specific fields, they gain a complementary skill set to their UMR degree, and these students have a competitive edge on the job market. In the area of research, we have available to us a fantastic mechanism known system-wide as the UROP, or the Undergraduate Research Opportunities Program. This small grant provides 6 to 8 weeks of financial support for student research with a faculty mentor. Since these funds can be used over the summer months in addition to during the academic year, it may be feasible for a student to work with a faculty mentor at a different campus. Promoting this more broadly, since it is available system-wide, and as a mechanism then to introduce students to a different campus, will really broaden their understanding of their field of research and get different faculty experts to contribute to their problem-solving efforts. So finally, with respect to outreach and engagement, one of the most systemness activities in which we participate annually is Support the U Day at the Minnesota State Capitol. This system-wide rally for state support of higher education brings us towards a common goal, while highlighting the achievements and aspirations of each of the system campuses. And I think finding other common themes across our campuses could result in University of Minnesota-wide, system-wide efforts that serve the greater Minnesota community. So our recommendations in the area of systemness are not necessarily a set of specific requests to the board, but rather an invitation to foster systemness and cross-campus experiences for students, faculty, and staff when these opportunities exist. So before I conclude our report, I wanted to provide you with an update from our fall report on the topic of sexual assault on college campuses. Since last semester, more national attention has been paid to the issue, with the creation of a presidential task force in January and a subsequent report from that group that is referenced in your docket material. This report, in brief, had 3 pieces of advice for colleges. First, that they carefully create useful systematic surveys to learn about their cultures of sexual assault. Second, to promote bystander intervention training. And third, to identify victim advocates from which their student population can quickly and easily seek help. A major piece of news since our last report is that the U.S. Department of Education released the names of 55 colleges and universities that are under investigation for noncompliance under Title IX. The University of Minnesota is thankfully not on that list. However, a college or university's appearance on this list does not indicate at this stage whether or not a college or university has or has not violated the law. One of these most serious concerns articulated by Dana Bolger in a recent article for Al Jazeera America was that universities may be seeing this investigation list as a PR problem, not as a health and safety issue for students. That it's more about risk management than justice for student victims. Although we welcome that the fact the University of Minnesota is not being investigated presently, our campus could work on responding to the recommendations of President Obama's task force and not just be a compliant institution, but one that sets the national standard for excellence on handling the issue of sexual assault. Among the 3 recommendations, the first, a systematic survey of the culture of sexual assault, may be a logical place to start. We already have expertise in this area through the Boynton Health Student Service College Student Health Survey and the university-wide Student Experience in the Research University Survey, both administered annually. To the second and third recommendations of the provision of bystander training and the identification of victim advocates, collaboration between offices on campus, such as the Aurora Center, student government groups, the administration, and the board, will be required as we seek to address this issue system-wide. There's much work to be done in this area, and no institution seems to be doing it right now. But the University of Minnesota is well positioned to fill this void should we choose to address this challenge. So I'd simply like to close my final report by reiterating what a pleasure it has been to work with you and to work with my colleagues from across the system campuses at the University of Minnesota over the past 2 years. And I hope that we've given you some food for thought to consider over your summer break and that this might appear on your work plan next year. So that concludes my report, Chair Beeson.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mason, and thank you for your colleagues for helping you prepare that report. It was content-filled, and there are items for us to deliberate on, and we will place those into our work plan next year, some aspect of that. President Kaler, would you like to add some comments?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So thank you, Professor Mason, and your colleagues for really a very thoughtful report, which I read quite carefully. I just have a couple of comments to make. Absolutely agree that developing a culture of financial literacy is absolutely critical. We need to expand that. The challenges associated with student debt, I think we all understand very carefully. But it's also important to have a broader conversation about the consequences of financial decisions that students make in terms of where they live, what they drive, what they do, and how they do it. You know, getting through in 4 years is a priority for the institution and a great way to avoid a 5th year of debt if you're an undergraduate. So it's an important conversation. I appreciate you bringing it forward. Do commend the student representatives in the campus in Duluth for the work they've done in that area, and communication up there is very important. Agree that the graduate students need to be important partners in this financial literacy case, and again, as part of the strategic plan and the graduate school evaluations that are going on, working hard on understanding the kinds of stipends and the way in which we can make that work better for everybody. Obviously, the sexual assault issue is a lot of attention. President Obama's task force shines a bright light. I do believe with great confidence that the Twin Cities campus is a national leader in this conversation. I would argue we are beyond compliant in that space. We have a lot of good work there, and I know all of the campuses are learning from that. The campus climate survey around sexual assaults, we are working with the vendor to see how we might do that. We're a little worried about survey fatigue. It's a lot of surveys that we take, and so we're trying to sharpen that. And finally, on the systemness topic, which may or may not actually be a word, we'll have to ask the provost, we'll make great strides. We are operating as a more integrated system. We are working on a system-wide admissions initiative, which I think is going to do a great deal to communicate the breadth of opportunities that students in the University of Minnesota system could take advantage of. So I'll close those brief comments with thanks. It's a very important job that you and your colleagues do. You might remember I was a student rep to the Board of Regents a million years ago, and it's an important opportunity to contribute to the university, and I'm grateful for the time that all of you spend doing that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Regent Broad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Systemness. This is a university, so we can create words, Mr. President, and I think you may have.
Thank you.
Which I appreciate. Ms. Mason, I just want to thank you for your service and for all of the student representatives. You bring a very important perspective of how things hit the ground in this university and beyond, and so I just want to thank you for that. And I also wanted to just mention something that my colleague Regent Omari just said, is that he said it was one of the best reports he's ever seen, including the ones that he wrote.
Thank you.
Regent Devine.
Yes, Megan, I just wanted to add to the comments already made here, and thank you for your efforts this year, and all of the student regents. It's been impactful. You know, the very active engagement that all of you have displayed, the attention to the details, I think, is very, very important. All of you have been willing to speak up. I know there's been talk that there should be more, but I have to say that I've been impressed with the feedback that many of us have seen, and that's been shared with us this last year. And certainly, I look at your agenda items in terms of the literacy and the issues of the sexual assault. You way preceded the Time Magazine feature article this last week in terms of the work that's already been done and the attention that we've been giving to it here at the University of Minnesota before it really became a significant national issue that it's now kind of taken center stage on. And then finally, just I'd like to make these two final comments. You know, the personal invitations that you as student regents have, and I shouldn't say maybe invitations, maybe I should say, no, urging that some of you student regents have had in asking us to attend student events, and that I think is appreciated, and I think it's been helpful, and certainly I've enjoyed attending many of the events that have been hosted here this last year. And then finally, Megan, you know, your work has been wonderful. You've been really a wonderful role model for not only as a chair, but as for future representatives here, and your work has been very much appreciated.
Thank you, and thank you for attending our events.
Regent Simmons.
Oh, thank you. This really thoughtful report is representative of what we've had from you folks, the student representatives, as you participated with us this past year. I appreciate it so much. One comment and then a question. The fact that this university is compliant with Title IX is not an accident. It's because of the values of the university. I'm so pleased about that. The question I have for you is, first of all, I fully agree about the student literacy, financial literacy being important, and I echo what the president says about commitment to that. I want to make sure we do it right, that we do what's effective. Do we know what works, either from our experience or from any of these other sort of national models? I just want to make sure we invest in what works.
Professor Mason.
Thank you, Chair Beeson and Regent Simmons. The feedback that we've received from the Duluth campus has been astoundingly positive with their multifaceted approach to trying to reach students, and so I think we do have a good model here already within our own system. And I would refer you also to the article in your docket that outlines the 10 kind of research-focused objectives that have been found to contribute to student financial literacy, and like I said, of which we're already doing a lot of those things, but perhaps looking to either expand those efforts or add on to the list of 10 until we check them all off. So, thank you.
Regent Allen.
Thank you very, very much. My colleagues have covered very well all the strong attributes of this report and your good work, and so let me just echo those, but then add that the most important thing the president said might have been that he was a student rep. So when you get to be a president, come back and remember us.
Thank you, Regent Allen.
I'm at a loss for words. Regent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Mason, for your work and your presentation and your report. Yesterday in the Facilities Committee, we alluded to it just briefly about what I would categorize the impending crises in our country of student debt. Not a secret, it's written about, it's talked about. And the analogy that comes to my mind is perhaps the 1980, the farm crises, when the farmers across the country were said, you know, borrow more money for operating, buy land, and we saw what eventually happened. So my question to you is, are there procedures and policies, and I'll be specific about this university, that students feel you're pressured to go into more debt than you normally wouldn't have to? I don't know how to say it, but you know, you live in an environment and you say, well, we'll just apply for another loan. And this being graduation season, we have talked to a number of graduates and they're happy, but there's a note of sadness because of the debt that they know they must pay back and will pay back. So the question is, are there procedures, policies, pressures that you as students feel that this university is imposing on you that ought to be changed?
Professor Mason.
Thank you, Chair Beeson and Regent Johnson. I don't think that there are any pressures that are unique to the University of Minnesota. I think you're right to say that it's a national challenge, that policies and procedures of increasing tuition, you know, or increasing student debt are a result of the overall higher education system. I think that one policy in particular, to at least anticipate the debt that students might take on, is to look at the graduate and professional student tuition philosophies, particularly in their professional schools where they actually can't anticipate what those increases in tuition might be from year to year. And so solidifying either what that increase might be or having whatever you pay your first year is the same that you would pay throughout your professional program might be ways that students can at least anticipate what they might be getting themselves into. But as we saw in the Facilities Committee yesterday, you know, as far as housing costs or tuition costs, we know that we're below much of our peer institutions. Now, does that make it right across the nation? Not necessarily, but it's not a challenge unique to the University of Minnesota.
Regent Omari, I'm going to make this the last question.
Thank you,
Chair. Please.
Thank you, Chair Beeson. One thing is an answer to Regent Johnson's question, where the university recently changed thesis credit options for graduate students, so we no longer have to wait until we're candidates, so we can start taking those thesis credits. So we are working on that. Thank you to you, Mr. President, and to the provost. I do recognize that this is one of the best reports I've read in the years that I've been reading them, so thank you to all of you for what you do. I think one of the challenges, and I appreciate it significantly, is balancing the breadth and the very in-depth things that you all are talking about. And I think you captured it here. And we're looking for those broad, impactful things that are happening across the student body, and that's very useful. And then the last thing I'll say is it's also extremely useful to have that update. So thank you all for providing that update from the fall semester. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Next item, General Counsel Donahue, please, to discuss Code of Ethics for a member of the board, members of the Boards of Regents. This is an annual review. Good morning, Mr. Donahue.
Good morning. Regent Beeson, members of the board, this is the annual review of your Code of Ethics, and you have by policy required yourself to have this review. And the point, of course, is to remind yourself of your commitment to integrity in your work and to the highest ethical standards that you have committed yourself to. There will not be a quiz. You can ask questions. Next year we'll have a quiz. Let's take a few minutes and walk through the policy. The policy is in your materials, and I'm simply going to walk through each of the sections. Section 1 is guiding principles. There are 3 of them. And the first, and I think the most important of those principles, is that as a regent, you are carrying out a public trust to govern one of the Minnesota's most important institutions. This is your so-called fiduciary duty to the people of the state of Minnesota. It is something you need to keep in mind as you act and as you make decisions about things. The second is the paramount interest is of the entire university and not of a portion of it or a constituency. If you graduated from CLA, if you graduated from UMD, that's great, but it isn't all about UMD or CLA. It is about the entire university. You have required yourself to keep that in mind. And the third thing is you have committed to the time that it takes to actually be a regent. And as all of you know a lot better than I do, it takes a lot of time to be a regent because you get confronted with lots of paper, lots of difficult choices, and lots of interesting issues. So those are the 3 principles. The next section has to do with financial disclosures. You are required to do a financial disclosure. You all did them. I am required to review them. I did review them. And they are all in conformance with the policy. So we're good with respect to financial disclosures. With respect to gifts, the policy says don't accept gifts except as permitted by policy. What that really means functionally in my mind is that you should not take gifts from anybody who has business before the board. If somebody has an interest in something before the board, just don't take anything from them. There's a statute, Minnesota Statute 15.43. It's contrary to the statute. Just don't do it. And I have no reason to believe anybody has ever done that. The next thing is expenses. You don't get compensated for your work, as you know, but you are entitled to your expenses. You should, of course, insist on them. In the definition section, the definitions call out 2 different kinds of conflicts of interest, financial and employment related. And I think that the conflict of interest section is probably the most important section of the policy. And what it says in section 2 is that a financial conflict of interest exists whenever a regent's family member, or a business associated with the regent or a regent's family member has an actual or a potential financial interest or any other interest in a matter before the board that may impair independence of judgment or objectivity in the discharge of the regent's public governance responsibilities. It's got 3 elements in it. It applies to you, it applies to your family members, it applies to the businesses you're associated with. It has to be an actual or a potential financial interest or any other interest, but the matter has to be before the board. It isn't just general to the university. And the third thing is that it has to potentially have an impact on your independence of judgment or objectivity. Best example I can give you is if your son or daughter works for a company that has a contract that comes before the board, you should recuse yourself. In my experience, regents have always done that. The second area of conflict of interest has to do with employment, and employment-related conflicts of interest are simply defined as it exists whenever a regent's employment relationship may impair independence of judgment. The way I think of that is if, in fact, you work for a company that has a contract before the board, you should recuse yourself. And in my experience, that's exactly what regents do. Section 6 is a procedural section, and it deals with how do you deal with conflicts of interest. And the fact is that conflicts of interest are not a bad thing. All of you have heard that. It's absolutely true. Conflict of interest should and does occur because of your activities in your employment, because of your activities in the community. It's probably part of the reason you're here, is that you are active in your community and you are active in the business community. And in the first instance, with respect to conflicts of interest, you get to decide for yourself. You determine whether or not there's a conflict. If you think there is, you need to tell the chair of the board or the chair of that committee, or if you're in doubt, I would talk to the chair or talk to the chair of your committee. If there is a conflict, you should recuse yourself. The way I think you should recuse yourself is you should state it out loud at the committee meeting. Say, I'm recusing myself because of a conflict of interest. Thank you. It is also our recommendation that you leave the room so that there is no question that you are not involved in the discussion of that item or the consideration of that item. And it's been my experience that regents do that. If you are in doubt, you should feel free to contact the general counsel, me, and I will talk to you about that. I have talked with some of you, many of you over the years, but that's a fair thing to do, and you should do that. You should take advantage of that service. If in fact there's a dispute, I will issue a written opinion about that. The general counsel will issue a written opinion about that, and the dispute can then go to the chair of the board. The chair can appoint a committee. But the board itself is the final authority on whether a conflict of interest exists. And that is how things are handled procedurally. We have tested that in the last few years, and actually it worked. So I'm proud of the fact that we have a provision that we actually can execute. The last two things in the policy, which I will note and then stop, are the two provisions. The first has to do with candidacy for public office. If you're going to run for public office, you have to resign from the board. You have decided that that's the rule with respect to yourselves, and so that's what you need to do. And then secondly, with respect to university employment, you cannot work for the university and be on the board unless you are the student regent, and then you can be employed as a student at the University of Minnesota. That's it. I'm more than happy to answer questions, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Counselor. Any questions, comments on this annual report?
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Yep.
Next, we'll shift the discussion to the annual capital improvement budget. President Kaler, I'll turn it over to you for some introductory remarks, and approaching the table are Vice President Wheelock and Fitzenreiter.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I bring forward for your action our fiscal year 2015 annual capital improvement plan. It is the result of successful efforts this past legislative session, and you've previously reviewed elements of the plan. It reflects, I believe, your commitment, and I know mine, to ensure that our students, faculty, and staff learn, work, and live in 21st century facilities as they prepare the next generation of Minnesota's workforce and allow discoveries to come forward. Also recognizes the importance of sustaining and improving facilities in support of teaching, research, and outreach. So with that, I'll turn over to Vice Presidents Wheelock and Fitzenreiter.
And before we do that, Mr. President, I'd like to ask Chair Allen of the Facilities Committee, and followed by Chair McMillan of the Finance Committee, for their recommendations and findings.
Mr. Chair, the Facilities and Operations Committee voted unanimously to recommend the approval of the resolution for the 2015 capital improvement budget. I move to approve the resolution.
Regent McMillan.
Chair Beeson, the Finance Committee has reviewed the financial components of the budget and similarly voted unanimously to recommend approval of those financial components for the 2015 fiscal year annual capital improvement budget. On behalf of the committee, I second Regent Allen's motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I think at this point we'll go to the presenters. Good morning, Vice President Wheelock and Fitzenreiter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board, President Kaler. In May and June, the board reviews and acts upon the university annual capital improvement budgets for the next fiscal year. This annual capital budget is the final stage of the capital improvements planning process. It is year one of our 6-year capital plan. These projects are for individual projects greater than $500,000 in total project cost, as well as approvals for pools of repair and replacement funds and HEAPR funds that fund many projects. Many HEAPR and renewal projects with design and operations impacts are presented to the board for approval as well for schematic design. And again, just so a reminder that the threshold is for $2 million or projects with visual impact. These projects must be completed and ready to move forward, funded, and ready to move into construction. Just a reminder about the financing for many of our projects. We are reliant, as my colleague, the CFO, will remind you of later in the presentation, but on state funding. This is a history of the request from the University of Minnesota, the governor's recommendations, the iterations during the legislative process, and the final disposition in the capital budget or bonding bill adopted by the legislature and endorsed by the governor.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this slide gives you a summary of the funding sources that support what is now a $291.7 million capital improvement budget for fiscal 15. You'll notice here that this slide has been adjusted for the actions of the legislature. The size of this proposal was considerably larger last month. You'll notice here $119.4 million of state debt that was authorized this past legislative session, $95.1 million of university debt. Yesterday on the Finance Committee of the board, we reviewed that $95.1 million, and to remind the committee, that's a unusually large number this time around. It's typically a smaller number representing really our 1/3 share traditionally of the state projects, but there is a very special and important project, the Bell Museum, that makes up $51.5 million of that $95 million, with the remaining being really the 1/3 of our match on state projects. To remind the board, the legislature also requested the board to issue the debt for the $51.5 million and increased our base appropriation in beginning in fiscal 16 by $3.5 million in support of that project. So with that, I'll turn back to my colleague, Vice President Wheelock, just to summarize the changes.
Vice President Wheelock.
So as we had noted when we were here in May to review the proposed annual capital budget, our request at that time for projects moving into this next fiscal year was based on the request that we had made to the legislature. That process had not yet concluded. We had noted that we would at a minimum be back with the changes that would reconcile our annual capital budget with the final outcome of the legislative session, and you can see many of those changes are noted here. The Microbial Sciences Research Building was removed from the project, and as well, the Laboratory Improvement Funds was adjusted as well in terms of its total funding. I'll move to the next page that delineates these changes in financial terms. So we decreased the Laboratory Improvement Fund by $5 million. We are still recommending the proceeding for improvements for our bee laboratories and for aquatic invasive species, which would be funded out of the research laboratory, but we did not get the full request funded. $7.5 million is an increase in the Tate Science and Teaching renovation. Since we had requested this funding from the state, we have evaluated the idea of and the benefit of consolidating all of earth sciences and functions within the renovated Tate and building enough new square footage to accommodate that so that we can free up space in other buildings and move forward with adjustments in those space and improvements in those facilities as well. Again, the highlights, we decreased the Chemical Sciences and Materials building in Duluth. We did receive funding to move forward with certain pre-design work, and we will be back with a request to move that project forward in the future. We had a sizable HEAPR request, and while we did receive $42.5 million from the state, we did adjust the difference between our request and the final appropriation, as is noted here. And in addition to the university issued debt of $51.5 million, this number reflects the additional fundraised funds on hand for the Bell Museum. We will be working to increase our fundraising to get up to the desired $57.5 million total project cost, and we will hold on beginning the design until we've had an opportunity to explore and do so. We've added the Andrew Boss meat smoker installation. As the work was being conducted, the pre-design work, we have discovered that the elements of the building that need to be modified are more extensive than originally anticipated, which brings it above the $500,000 limit and then therefore requires regental approval. And we have added for completion of the alternative workspace in Don Howe. We had proceeded with some work in that building for the Office of Human Resources, and our goal is to ultimately finish the rest of that building. So those are the changes from May. Mr. Chair, members, we would advance the resolution and stand ready to answer any questions.
There is a resolution and a second. I'll open this up for discussion. Regent Simmons.
Thank you, Chair Beeson. I would appreciate some help understanding the implications of the Bell Museum project with no state debt taken for that and all the debt being university debt, plus, of course, operations, et cetera. Can we talk about what we need to do and what we can't do and the timing of the Bell?
I may turn that over, well, either Mr. Fitzenreiter or the President or Chair Allen. So I think this was also dealt with the debt advisory.
Right. So let me start, Chair Beeson and Regent Simmons, and then we may pass that particular potato around. In terms of, well, let me start this way. We had what I assured the committee yesterday, I believe to be a unique situation, certainly a very rare one, in which we were able to move in the political environment around the overall bonding bill in a way that enabled the state to fund the Bell Museum, but using our credit to do that. It does make an impact, obviously, on our debt capacity, but it's not viewed as a substantial one and should not limit us with opportunities going forward. In terms of operation, when the Bell Museum comes online, there will of course be an operating budget associated with that, which the Bell Museum does roll up to the College of Food, Agriculture, and Natural Resource Sciences, and the dean is able to manage that. There's obviously operating costs associated with the current Bell Museum that would shift once that comes online. We do have a fundraising opportunity. We have some matching funds identified that we need to raise the match for, and the foundation and community seem willing to take those on. So it seemed to Fitz and I an opportunity to move the Bell Museum, which has been hanging around for a while. It was a regentially approved ask on our list twice before. It certainly isn't getting any better just sitting there, so it seemed to us to be a strategic opportunity to move that forward in a way that we thought was responsible and frankly a little bit creative to solve a long-standing problem.
Regent Simmons.
Thank you. That helped me very much. One of the things I think we ought to consider as a board with the president too is a new project that's substantial like this will require fundraising, which means it will become a priority for fundraising. And the regents must and do accept gifts. We have the authority to accept gifts, the responsibility. But I think we need to also be out in front on this and look at the priorities and have the regents, I don't know if the words approve or not, but really approve the fundraising priorities for the university, not just get it on the back end, because that can have a substantial impact on what we do and what we don't do.
Regent Allen, did you want to?
Just 2 points. I would echo all of the points the President made. 2 additional ones. We did receive some extra funding for the debt service, so even though we're carrying the full debt, we are also reimbursed for some of the debts, for all of the debt service. And the second point is, we raised good questions about what do we do with the project now that we have it. But I would point out, it was one of our priorities in the past several years, but it kept getting turned down. Now, without much work on our part, it arrives.
Please don't.
Regent Simmons.
Thank you. Please don't get me wrong. I'm a big fan of the Bell Museum. I love it. No conflict of interest, but I've been a member for a long time. But I do want us to make sure we're cognizant of the decisions we're making, of things we won't do from the philanthropic side, because we'll raise money for one thing and not for another. And I just want to make sure we up front are conscious of that decision and in fact make that decision.
Thank you, Regent Devine.
Yes, Chairman Beeson, a couple quick points. This is the bonding bill this year is a unique one in several aspects. The Bell Museum piece has been interesting. It's been a priority for us in the past. It wasn't. There's been the fundraising efforts that have started in the past that have stopped, stopped. And there is some complexity to the issue, as we all are now familiar, the summary that President Kaler just gave. I think the point to note is the state of Minnesota, on behalf of the people, made a gift to the people of Minnesota of this facility. And it is to house the university collections, the valuable collections that we have in the natural sciences. But moreover, it's really it's a state resource. And if you look at the thousands and thousands of school children that go through that building each year, we often see the buses parked up and down University Avenue all during the school year for the tours that come there. It is a state resource, and I think that needs to be put in the context a little differently than some of the other buildings that we look at in terms of how we look at the overall funding mechanisms that are put together for traditional funding of our bonding one-third arrangements and so on. I think this was a creative solution. And I also want to make note that there was one person probably in particular, Alice Hausman, Representative Hausman, who really drove the bus on this project to get this project done. And now we have a place that will be a state-of-the-art place to put our collections going forward, which I think is noteworthy. The other noteworthy item in this bonding bill, I think also related to the Crookston facility, most of those are self-funded. They're funded with student fees. And that rec center at Crookston was done with state appropriation, recognizing that the funding mechanisms, the traditional mechanisms, weren't there. And I think the state recognized that. And again, it was a wonderful gift to the University of Minnesota by the people to provide that resource. And then finally, I think the other thing that probably should really be noted right now is two other projects. The state investment in Tate is significant, and sciences and the engineering investment that the state of Minnesota is making is significant. It will have a long-lasting impact. It was long overdue, and I think that the recognition is due here in this forum right now to mention that. And then finally, it's a relatively small amount, the AIS lab, or the redevelopment of the labs there on the St. Paul campus for the research work that we're doing on that. I don't think there was an issue that I heard more about this year from constituents in various places that I went than the AIS piece. And I think that that's noteworthy in that it really advances the business that we're in of doing research, public research that was really called for and asked for by a number of people, and a number of legislators got behind it in a bipartisan way to support that particular issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Devine. Regent Broad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I just wanted to say thank you for the language of the resolution. I know we're talking about the big projects and the spending on it, but the language of the resolution is important because I think it has been transitioned within this president's administration and under your guidance to be very mission-focused, and I'm very appreciative of that as opposed to a more philosophical statement about the need for capital investment, and so I appreciate the mission focus on this language. Let me just tell you a quick story about taking my son to various colleges and looking at those colleges it's a new frame that I can put capital investment. When we went to one of the colleges, I won't name it, and he looked and he said, well, where's the business school? He wanted to think about business. And I said, well, here it is. It's in the back corner. And he's like, well, Mom, why is this school a big, beautiful school and this school a big, beautiful school? Why isn't the big business school prominent? Why isn't there focus on the business school? That's seen through the eyes of a student. So if I think about capital investment, and I often focus on budget numbers, as we all know, but I think about capital investment in a little bit of a new way through his eyes. And when we think about recruitment, we think about student experience. When I went and visited the labs, you look about safety for staff and students. And so as long as the capital budget is within the debt service guidelines, as long as the capital budget is something that our budget actually can handle in terms of affordability of the debt, I think this budget fits both of those guidelines for me, and I'll be voting yes.
Regent Frobenius.
I want to be careful about how I make my comments because I don't want to be critical of the Bell Museum project. There are lots of political considerations in this project. The Bell Museum is an important resource for the state of Minnesota. We're citizens of the state. We need to take on these kind of obligations from time to time. I do have just a little bit of a slippery slide concern here, and that is that with all the other considerations, we will have some uncovered additional operating costs as a result of this expansion. Utilities will go up and a variety of other elements. It does take a little bite out of our debt capacity. Maybe there are enough trade-offs in this particular project to make that an entirely appropriate thing. I just have concern that we might get asked to take on more and more projects of this over time. There is a tremendous interest in the state in talking about the University of Minnesota needing to focus its role in more areas. I think this is a slight diversion in a separate direction, and one that in and of itself is fine, but as a precedent is of some concern to us, and we need to be very careful about diluting our efforts.
President Kaler.
Regent Frobenius and Chair Beeson, I agree with you completely, which was why I characterized this as a unique opportunity. We are not going to be in this business going forward. I think I made that very clear to our friends in St. Paul. But for all the reasons that we all know, this seemed to me to be just a chance to move this. I do recognize it was not perhaps in the usual way we do things. We did consult with the chair and vice chair on this. So it's not going to be a model going forward.
I would echo, as the chair, this is an autonomy issue partly, and there may be earmarks that are approved, either operating or capital, in the future this board will need to reject. And we hold forth our autonomy and our ability to accept and approve projects. This is different for all the reasons that you said. We appreciate the legislature working with our staff on that particular project and their help in this entire really outstanding package of capital improvements. Regents, when we come back to Regent Simmons, Regent Lucas had a comment.
Thank you, Chair Beeson. I just want to build on what Regent Simmons said about the cascading consequences, or I would like to call them cascading opportunities that flow from a decision like this. Of course, now this leaves us the challenge of repurposing the Bell Museum, and that would be a significant cascading opportunity. And the College of Design, I think, has indicated an interest in it, and listening to Professor Durfee talking about the exciting work of Target and the College of Design. I think exciting opportunities can come out of this, but we have to recognize that it's not a single event. It opens up other doors.
Thank you, Regent Lucas. Regent Simmons.
Thank you. When I vote in favor of the resolution, I will be voting on it, thinking about the Bell Museum, and the reason I will vote for it is because this was on the priority list for this university. It has been on, and it got on that list because it's a good project for us to do. I will tell you, had it not been a university priority on the list for the bonding bill, I would not be voting for the resolution. And when the president says this is unique, let's remember that. Let's codify that. Our minutes should reflect why we are approving this, because there's a slippery slope here. There's no such thing as pretty unique, very unique. There's unique, and I'd like that in the minutes.
If I could.
President Kaler.
And Regent Simmons and Chair Beeson, I hope it's obvious, but I'll make it so, wouldn't simply not have done this had it not been a historic priority for the institution. And again, I just refer to the unique political environment around this opportunity.
I'll call for a vote now. Would all those in favor of approving the capital budget say aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Vice President Wheelock and Mr. Roloff and his staff and others that were over in St. Paul to bring about this amount of capital for the University of Minnesota. Next is the President's recommended 2015 annual operating budget. President Kaler, we reviewed your recommendations on May 9th. Would you like to touch on some highlights before we hear the Finance Committee's recommendation from Mr. McMillan?
I will do that, Chair Beeson. Thank you very much. I think I have the clicker for this. Vice President Fitzenreiter is at the ready to correct and amend, but I will walk through the material that's in your docket. Obviously, we are addressing goals that you as a board and I share as president for the institution around access, affordability, and academic excellence. We will see the role of operational excellence and accountability in this, and also a step towards restoring the historic state support of higher education. In terms of affordability, tuition and fees are outlined on this slide. Top line information, of course, is no increase in tuition for Minnesota resident undergraduates for the second year in a row. We are growing the differential between resident and non-resident undergraduate rates. In fiscal year 14 on the Twin Cities campus, we are at the bottom of the Big Ten for non-resident tuition and required fees, $2,000 below what it costs to go to Nebraska as an out-of-state student. And that $1,000 increase we expect will continue to have us at the bottom of the Big Ten. The goal is to grow that to a median level. We'll do that very slowly. On the graduate level, generally 3% increases, occasional adjustment where we're below market for similar offerings, or that we have an internal misalignment of tuition costs. Very importantly, from the professional side, the medical school and the vet medical tuition increase is 0. The Carlson surcharge the board approved 2 years ago will move from $500 to $750 a semester in the third of 4 years of phase-in. And the room and board charges here are at historical lows. They're driven by debt service on new residence halls in Crookston, Morris, and the Twin Cities campus. And because we're in a market, there is actually increase in rent in Rochester. The investment in student aid and changes in the state program are shown here. We have a $2 million increase in merit-based recruitment funds. That essentially is a tail of commitments that we made earlier, and expanding national recruitment modestly in the Washington, D.C. area. The UPromise program, we grew awards by 14% in FY13, but the program is fully funded with base dollars now, so we do not need to increase that allocation. And remind you that those awards go to families up to $100,000 in adjusted gross family income. It's important to note that the need-based aid available to students from other sources will increase fairly substantially. The Pell Grant award increases by about $85 for most people, and the maximum then $57.30. Importantly, in the Minnesota State Grant Program, there was an opportunity outside of a statute change to increase the living and miscellaneous expense allowance, and that will reflect an increase for full-time University of Minnesota students receiving the state grant between $210 and $295 annually. So when you spread that across the population of students at the University of Minnesota, need-based aid will go up by about $3.8 million. So that's a very good story and reflects a balance between merit and need investment.
In terms of academic investments, about half of incremental new spending will be for academic investments, faculty positions, research infrastructure, et cetera, spread across 30 units around the state. And if you're interested, I can respond to questions about examples of those investments. We are proposing a 2.5% compensation increase. We do expect that when we are able to apply it by merit criteria, we will do so. And finally, mission support and operations. Apropos our earlier conversation, when new buildings come online and we don't take old buildings off, we do have an increase in utilities and operation support for the facilities listed there, and then about $3 million for academic support investments as indicated there. We are moving money in the context of our operational excellence activities, $18.5 million of reallocation to higher priority needs around academic excellence. The primary activity there is elimination of positions, most of them empty positions that we have no longer funded, and the estimated number of positions reduced across all funds for FY15 is approximately 115 people. We've identified $15.6 million in administrative cost reduction. We will finalize that list after the end of the fiscal year, share it with the board and with the legislature. We've identified $14.4 million in O&M tuition and state specials and $5.8 million in other non-sponsored funds. So we are well on our way towards the $90 million reduction, $35.8 million to date. This slide summarizes the changes from the operating budget that I shared with you last month. We're pleased to learn that the SNAP Ed grant was renewed. This caused us to, when it was not funded, to unfortunately let some people go in Greater Minnesota who were delivering that mission. It's been renewed, so we'll see an increase in indirect cost recovery from that grant. The School of Public Health is heavily reliant upon grant and contract income. They scrubbed their books and anticipate a decrease in indirect cost refunds this year. So those then net to a $45,000 positive. The state special appropriations are listed here. I will remind you that the university requested no increase in supplemental budget from the state, but we did, however, not sit on our hands. We had a very active engagement with legislators, and legislators became interested in opportunities at the University of Minnesota. I'll focus on the third one there, regenerative medicine, which is a direct result of Representative Erin Murphy visiting the university, becoming aware of Professor Jacob Tolar's work, and working with her colleagues to bring us $4.35 million recurring as an investment in regenerative medicine, and that's a program that will be proposal-driven, and proposals from the university and Mayo will be considered. That's an enormous investment. I'll just take the aside here. This will leverage us in the national conversation about NIH funding around regenerative medicine. It's a very smart research investment. Similarly, we'll receive one-time money around invasive terrestrial plants and animals, and $1 million one-time for the Forever Green initiative. So that's $8.9 million, again, resulting from legislative initiatives. We also had a very successful year with the LCCMR, the Legislative Citizen Commission on Minnesota Resources. Those are treated like sponsored funds money, but you'll see we have $11.3 million arriving there. And in addition, $1.1 million in transfers from state agencies in support of the invasive species or the porcine virus research. So those are the changes. So the big pie chart is shown here. You've seen this before. Even if with those changes, it still leaves us with a $3.6 billion budget. It is a big organization. For your reference, state appropriations are 17% of all revenues, and tuition represents 25% of that revenue. That does show all of our activity, recognizing, though, that the internal sales are internal, the ISO at the bottom, the 6%, are internal exchanges, selling things to ourselves, and so they are removed ultimately from our consolidated financial statements. They would represent a double counting. So that's a very quick overview, Mr. Chair, members of the board. The resolution is in your packet, and I will stand for questions.
Colleagues, we've received this proposed budget last month. We conducted a public hearing, and then this month we reviewed it again through the Finance Committee, and I'd like to ask Regent McMillan to give his report and a recommendation for approval if that is your choice.
Thank you, Chair Beeson, and thank you, President Kaler, for that walkthrough of this $3.6 billion fiscal year 14-15 operating budget. The committee spent the bulk of its May meeting, as you know, looking at the budget in depth with Vice President Fitzenreiter and Associate Vice President Tennyson taking us through that. I won't re-highlight what President Kaler just did, but the tuition and fees outcomes are good, especially for for resident undergrads, and the fee outcomes in most cases are excellent. So the committee spent quite a bit of time on that. The operational excellence is another highlight of where we spent some time, and then yesterday, Associate Vice President Tonneson took us through the changes, which were refreshingly and encouragingly nice to have a change from May to June with increases. So that was outstanding, and I think reflective of the commitment President Kaler and his team have made to the partnership with the legislature. So those changes around student aid, indirect cost recovery, and then the state special appropriations were reviewed in considerable detail. So with that, I don't think I have further comments. My colleagues may, but I will officially move adoption of the resolution that you have in your materials, and also note Regent Broad's comment earlier about some mission focus that's built into this as well.
Second.
There is now a motion and a second. I'll open this up for discussion. Regent Devine.
Yep. Thank you very much, Regent Beeson. It's a very fine budget. I compliment the President, his staff, and those that have been involved in this process, putting this together. It was a very thoughtful budget, and it was, there are a number of unusual things that kind of had to be wrapped in this year, but the work overall is excellent, and I want to make sure that I make note of that. The second thing I want to do is that there was great constraint put in
about the proposed tuition, and it's very good. I like it very much. What I want us to draw attention to is that when we make decisions in administration and board approval on budget models for university, that drives decisions on tuition too, not just what the market will bear, not just what we think is right in terms of charging for the education, but how we distribute funds within the university internally by college has a direct effect on what they need to charge students. So I just want us to remember when we're approving operational budgets, the impact it has on tuition. Second comment I want to make is for the President. The commitment you made to take so much money out of administration is one that we have and should applaud. And what I appreciate is that you are being very open-minded about how to do that, looking fresh, getting outside resources when you need them for new creative ideas that may not just bubble up. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Regent Cohen.
Thank you, Chair Beeson. I just want to compliment you, Mr. President, and like the priorities, the 3 A's, access, affordability, and academic excellence, and especially that we're paying attention to the excellence of the university also. And so I would give you an A on the budget, and certainly will vote for it.
Regent Broad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, based on some sincere concerns of mine over the legacy approach to higher education spending, I look at budgets very carefully. And I'm looking for us to be leaders and looking for us to lead the change in higher education. I think we lead in so many ways in this university and can do that in other ways as well. The $90 million lead on reducing administrative costs is a big number, but it's a good start. And I'm not suggesting that we just willy-nilly, and Mr. President, you're focused and you're strategic in that approach, but the $90 million is something that I think shows not just a number, but a commitment toward doing things differently. And that, to me, is significant, and it's significant in terms of the opportunities that we have to lead some changes in higher education and lead change here at the university. I'm also looking forward to continuing our conversations over tuition strategies, not just tuition numbers, but tuition strategies. What is the right strategy for us? What is the right strategy for our students? How do we get the best and the brightest? How do we make sure that it's affordable? All those conversations and building that into our long-range planning, I think, is going to be critical as we model what we need to do and how it's going to look into the future. So those are a couple of things that I'm really looking forward to. And I think this budget sets us up pretty well to start moving in those directions. Now, Mr. President, you're probably wondering, maybe not, but probably wondering why I didn't say anything nice about you in Regent Beeson's Regent Beeson's approach. But let me just say I was waiting for this moment because I wanted to wrap it together. You know, in looking at the budget, I am absolutely confident that you are crystal clear on the need for strategic change at this university, and I'm equally as confident that you know the path toward that success. And so this budget, to me, is kind of it exemplifies the approach that you take with a strong focus on affordability for students, smart investments, and it has an aggressive approach to doing things differently and doing things in a way that reduce costs but expand both value and excellence. So as I evaluate this budget, I think about you know, the work that you've done in the short time that you've been here. We've been here about equal amount of time, and this budget is targeted, it's strategic, and it's responsible. And I think those three words really match the work that you've done.
Thank you, Regent Broad. Regent Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. President, for the budget. I have a question of Mr. Fitzenreiter. By not increasing tuition for another year, had it been 1%, I believe it'd be $8.4 million of additional revenue based on your pie chart. What challenges for 2015-16 do you see on the horizon because of the 25% of the budget not being increased? And assuming that state support is, well, maybe not increased, but minimum and other revenue sources. I'm looking ahead into the future based on this budget. What are the challenges?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, certainly you're right to ask the question, what are those challenges? We will, of course, next legislative session be presenting to our policymakers a biennial request. And the challenges that the university has next session will be clearly around tuition. That will be an issue for us, again, I believe, a challenge. What's the legislative desire around tuition? I think another fiscal challenge is our facilities and the R&R and HEAPR discussion that the board and the administration have been having. Federal funding is going to be a challenge. And the research endeavor at the university. We visited and discussed yesterday in our preliminary long-range plan that it looks like our research funding from the federal government could be flat for the next couple of years. And that actually, under this environment, might be a good thing, but we certainly want to try to grow our market share. So I'd say it's facilities, it's federal funding, it's tuition, and it's staying competitive on financial aid and staying competitive on compensation.
Very good. Thank you.
On that note, I'm going to ask the board if they're ready to vote now. We've got some other important topics today in a short amount of time. So unless there's something urgent, I'm going to call the question on this budget. Thank you, presenters. Would all those in favor of this budget say aye?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Mr. Fitzroy, do you want to stay up here for this next resolution? And we're going to invite up Norwood Teague, Director of Athletics, and is Mr. Ellis here as well?
They're coming.
Coming up. Good morning, and if you could identify yourself for the record.
Mike Ellis.
Norwood Teague. Chairman Beeson, Board of Regents, Dr. Kaler, thank you for having us here this morning. This presentation is a reflection of our efforts to be physically responsible as a Department of Athletics, as well as to provide an improved football atmosphere for our fans at TCF Bank Stadium. This time I'll turn it over to our Executive Associate Athletic Director, Mike Ellis.
Chairman Beeson, Board, President Kaler, thank you so much for having us here today. I understand brevity is the order of the day, so I will be very quick with this and hope that meets to your satisfaction. I'd start you with, we're here to speak about a proposed change and a resolution on student season ticket sales. A brief history, 2006. You don't need to read all of this, I don't think, but it's just a quick look back. In 2006, the legislature enacted a statute that provided state financing. And as a part of that, there's the full resolution, but as a part of that, if you would adjust down to the last sentence, if any student tickets remain unsold 4 days before any game, they will also become available for sale to the public at the public ticket prices. And it's that last sentence there that we propose to amend that would result in what we hope to be a better fan experience. The reasons we want to address this at this point, if you take a look at the numbers, since the opening of the stadium in 2009, student attendance has steadily declined, beginning at a high of 10,248, and then moving downward up until the 2013 season, which I would like to address here in just a moment. But it was on a downward trend until last season. The half-full student section is undesirable as it affects the atmosphere of the entire stadium. We want to make this a great game day experience, not only for our student athletes, but for our students and the fan base as well. We want to make sure that student section is full and engaged with 10,000 students if at all possible. And we need to create a culture that promotes a sense of urgency that would lead to a stronger ticket purchase by our students. To that end, we have worked very diligently, and if you see as the number went back up in 2013 on the upward trajectory, we had identified last year at the end of our first year here that we needed to be more aggressive in reaching out to the student base with a spring marketing campaign. That had not been done to this point at the university, to our understanding. And we were very aggressive last year with a spring marketing campaign that resulted in a little over 1,500 season tickets being sold at this date last year. And we saw that upward tick result in a better number for us. At this point, at this date of this year, we're almost at 3,000 tickets sold, almost double the number through an aggressive spring marketing campaign aimed directly at the students. Dr. Kaler and Director Teague both participated in a awkward family photo program that was met with great enthusiasm across the university community and was very successful. And we plan to continue that through the summer through orientations, and we appreciate your participation, Dr. Kaler.
My pleasure.
This is a long-term behavioral change that will take time, but we understand the need to leverage an asset, such an asset as TCF Stadium. I would add that we do have a comprehensive integrated platform to go forward into the fall when the students return to school, and that's through focus groups, through numerous focus group interactions. We've been told that the way to best reach students through this campaign is to make them aware of our sense of urgency that we need to create is through social media platforms. And we have a tremendous young lady leading our marketing efforts, Corey Sears, and she's been very aggressive to that end. And I think that we would expect that upward tick to continue as we move forward into the fall. Coach Kill obviously wants to see that stadium packed and full with students. And as you can see, he understands the impact that these young people can have on the games. So the proposed change, as you've seen, the current language restricts the sale of unsold tickets to the general public until the Tuesday before each home game. What we're asking for is new language that would allow athletics to sell unsold student tickets to the general public beginning the Monday following the first week of school in September. Why is that important? Because we feel with the campaign that Corey and her folks have put together that we will do our due diligence to really create the sense of urgency that we're after here. And I think you can see from our spring efforts and that do continue through the summer and into the fall, that we are working hard to make sure that our students get first opportunity to buy those tickets. These tickets will only be released for sale if all the other tickets in the Stadium Bowl are sold out. I think that's important to note. We will sell from the outside in. So as you come around the bowl in the upper deck, we would go outside in so that we would least restrict any engagement with the students. And we will always maintain a minimum of 6,000 tickets for our students. And that proposed language will better ensure the student seating area is as full as possible, which would lead to a better game day experience and a better atmosphere and a better fan experience, I should say. It would promote a culture of earlier purchase of student tickets and a sense of urgency, as we've seen through our spring campaign. And it would continue to provide affordable access to students while giving Gopher Athletics the authority to sell unsold student tickets in a timelier manner, which we feel is also it's incumbent upon us to be fiscally responsible and maximize currently untapped revenue.
I'm going to ask for a motion on this in a second. For the record, there is a motion and a second. Thank you, Executive Associate Vice President Ellis, for that. Any discussion on this resolution? Regent Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Athletic Director Teague and Mr. Ellis. Good presentation. Question, what is the cost for a season ticket for a student?
Chairman Beeson, Regent Johnson, our current cost is $90 for a student season ticket, which is in the bottom third of the Big Ten.
That's for the whole season?
Yes, sir.
You can sign up. Regent Johnson, you can do the math for
next school.
Regent McMillan.
Thank you, Chair Beeson. I don't like to anticipate problems, but some problems are good ones to have, and wouldn't it be a great problem if we got back to 10,000 students there? And I don't know that we need to do anything with the resolution, but if we got there, I assume we'd make that a priority and we'd get beyond 6,000 at a reserve forum and reserve all 10.
Absolutely. It is our goal to fill that section with 10,000 students.
Regent Devine.
Let me just quickly say I appreciate the creativity and thought that has gone to bring this to us, and I also would challenge you to keep coming to us with other issues that we might be of help with that can support the ticket sales.
Chairman Beeson, Regent Devine, I agree. There has been a very much collaborative effort, we feel like, with you guys from athletics perspective, and we're appreciative of the support you guys have given us.
Last question, if we can, Regent Lucas.
Thank you, Chair Beeson. It seems very creative to me, and thank you for doing that extra legwork. I'm just wondering how much you would sell those student tickets to the public for.
Chairman Beeson, Regent Lucas, those tickets would be available for sale at the regular public price to be determined by the athletic department. So we'd like to sell those at full price, obviously, but if we couldn't and we had special packaging leading into a game day, if it was a half-price ticket, those tickets would be half-price.
And just a quick follow-up question. You said that would only happen if all the other tickets are sold. And how often would that happen, that all the other tickets would be sold?
Chairman Beeson, Regent Lucas, we anticipate, one, not going into that student allotment unless every seat is sold, as you understand it. And we anticipate that, we hope that happens every game. Do not anticipate that happening every game, but as our program continues to build and strengthen, I think that could become a reality.
Thank you.
We're going to see Mr. Teague next month, too, I believe, and maybe Mr. Ellis, and a more strategic and broader discussion about future of intercollegiate athletics. We had not actually, I guess, had the schedule for approval this month, but we have gone as far as a motion and a second, and you've seen it's a fairly straightforward plan, and so my preference would be to take a vote on this and move this along for staff's sake as the summer.
I call for the vote.
And is that a second? Motion? We already have a motion and second. So would all those then in favor say aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you next month.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got a. Go get them. We have a presentation that, and we're going to take a little. This may go over our noon hour a little bit, just to put folks on notice. I don't want to short circuit this presentation. There's been a great deal of planning that's gone on. This is a perspectives on neighborhood engagement resolution on planning principles. The presenters would identify themselves. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, President Kaler, with me today are Vice President Fitzenreiter and Monique McKenzie, the Director of Planning. I may have preempted the President for some introductory comments,
Yes,
and I apologize. I will defer.
No, please, President Kaler.
Thank you, Chair Beeson. I just want to make a couple of preliminary observations to tee this up a bit. It's obvious that for 160 years, this campus in Minneapolis and the city of Minneapolis have been inextricably linked together. We've grown up, grown around each other for a very long time. It's clear also, I think, that our place-based situation is an advantage to the University of Minnesota. Being a comprehensive research university in the middle of a vibrant urban space is a plus for us. Being on the banks of a great river is a plus for us. Being in a space where people can live and work and enjoy life in a compact area is a plus for us. But it's a dynamic that we need to examine, and frankly, we need to be involved in more definitively. Very clearly, the reputation of the neighborhoods around the Minneapolis campus impacts the reputation of the university. You need to remember no further back than the fall in which we had crime situations that negatively impacted the image of the university. And at the same time, the university's stature and role as an economic engine has a huge impact on the neighborhoods around us. So there's a very tight connection together, and I wouldn't go further back than 3 years, but I will say during my presidency, we have probably not engaged in the neighborhood conversations about what we want them to be and listen to what they want us to be in as planful way as probably is optimal. And so this is the first big step in opening that conversation and bringing the board into this space. We will conclude with a resolution advising us and enabling us to continue these engagements. So I think it's an important element to do, and I appreciate the board taking time both yesterday and today to engage in this important conversation. So with that, I will turn over to the team.
Thank you, President Kaler.
Thank you,
Vice
Mr.
President
Chair.
Wheelock.
Members of the board, President Kaler. I'll now advance. Thank you for that introduction. These are the points that we're going to touch on and also serve as framing questions for continuing this conversation both within the administration of the University of Minnesota and with the Board of Regents and with our partners outside of the university community. Why is it important? What do we hope to achieve? What tools and processes do we use? What principles guide us? And perhaps most important, how will we know when we're successful? And I want to just suggest to you that this is not a new concept. We are part of a system. We have campuses and facilities throughout the state of Minnesota. We have regular engagement with partners, both public and private, other jurisdictions. But there is something unique about the Minneapolis campus. First and foremost, the rate of change around this institution, this campus, the East and West Banks, has accelerated dramatically in recent years. Our students and increasing numbers are living in the neighborhoods around the campuses, the East and West Bank campuses here in Minneapolis. While we used to 20 years ago talk about the commuter student who was perhaps living 15 or 20 miles away, now they're living 5 or 15 minutes walk away. So this has redefined our sense of campus, and it has redefined their sense of the campus as well. So the greater number of students and the intertwining of our edges. We are a very porous campus, and there is a blurring and blending of the responsibilities and the edges of this campus. And we need to think strategically in the near term about our interests and as well plan for the interests of this institution 15, 20, 30, 50 years out. The density that is occurring is changing our transportation patterns and our transit investments. We will welcome the official opening of a light rail line tomorrow that will run through the heart of this campus. It will forever change the look, feel, and operations of this institution. And the university brand and the campus experience, we are in an increasingly competitive environment. We have new global competitors, we have new modes of learning, and there is a distinct advantage, we believe, about a place-based experience and thinking about the place in a very holistic and broad sense as part of our competitive strategy as we move forward. We are in the people business, but we have two primary assets to help advance our missions: our people and our places. So as we try to meet the needs of our students, as we try to advance our goal of developing new knowledge and advancing discovery, and as we try to strengthen our connection of public service and outreach, both our people and our places and spaces are important assets as we seek to advance those missions. As the President mentioned, we are in the middle of a very vibrant metropolitan area, heart of the metropolitan area, and we are surrounded by innumerable opportunities for employment for our students, for partners for our research and discovery, and it has served as a very important tool to complement the on-campus housing experience that we have for our students. The evolution of the campus and the neighborhoods has been remarkable in our 160-year history. We evolved as a couple of buildings on a bluff overlooking the Mississippi, and we have both expanded our geography and the density on our own campus. That has been mirrored in the neighborhoods around the campus as well. Our growth has been coupled with a very rapid rate of change. For our students, their parents, the public, the campus and the neighborhood edges are blurred, and the entire district of the city is identified with the university. With 89% of our first-year students now living on campus and 20-ish% of our second-year students living on campus, the majority choose to remain close to campus when they make their first move during sophomore or upper class years. This near-campus housing boom has led to a large number of new student housing near campus. As the market evens out, slows down, or perhaps is overbuilt, we must ask, is this sustainable? In the last 15 years, many single-family homes have been purchased by investor owners and converted to rentals. And the current building boom is higher density private rental housing is changing further the demographics and characters and economics of the campus area neighborhoods and Dinkytown and Stadium Village commercial districts. So what do we hope to achieve by changing our approach? We hope to strengthen our relationships with our community partners, and we strive to reinforce our competitive advantage as a great place-based experience. We strive to think competitively or creatively about leveraging our resources in partnership with other public or private partners and entities. We seek to position the university to advance our interests in light of the rapidly changing environments in the near neighborhood communities. And essentially, we hope to and must ensure that the neighborhoods around this institution are safe and livable for our students and the other members of our community who live and work in those neighborhoods. When we talk about strengthening neighborhood livability, we really are focusing on the unique identity of these neighborhoods or of the broader geography in which the university is placed. These are unique neighborhoods, they have unique assets, and we need to think about how we can best leverage those assets. We seek to do development in human scale. Human scale addresses the height of the buildings, the level of interest at the ground level, the investment in the streets and the sidewalks, the degree of natural light, the connection with views of the sky, and the density of development to support frequent transit service and neighborhood-serving businesses. Mixed use, a mix of housing, workplaces, recreation, and neighborhood-serving shops and services supporting different activities throughout the day. And housing choices, choices suited for all types of households and income levels, housing people who are workers at a range of jobs or customers for a variety of shops and services. Safety and health, places that support the physical safety but are also well kept and promote social inclusion and sociability. And natural amenities. These should be neighborhoods well served by parks, playgrounds, plaza, and greenways. They should be connected to other natural features, whether it's rivers or streams or woodlands. Trees and plantings are integrated into street designs. Buildings are designed to provide compact gardens, courtyards, terraces, and green roofs. And pedestrian friendly. Places that support car-free living by being well connected to citywide and regional destinations by sustainable transportation modes, walking, cycling, public transit, and taxi. Streets and public transit are designed for universal accessibility and that are sustainable, holistically, broadly speaking. These are built environments and activities that use natural resources and energy sparingly and efficiently and generate little waste. So when we think about strengthening neighborhood livability, we have our essential layer of, much like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, are we safe? Is this an area where, from a very primal standpoint, we believe that this is a neighborhood that is safe to move through, to live in, to conduct business in? This is an expansion of our university campus, and we need to ensure that our community remains safe in these neighborhoods. That's not our sole responsibility. We do that in partnership with others, specifically the city of Minneapolis, for example, but much of how these neighborhoods are built and developed will lend to that safety. But beyond that, does it promote our goals about livability? Is this a place where socializing can occur? Do people feel like there's a place to recreate? Are there places for them to do that passively, park space, green space? And can they do that in concert with others through places where they gather, whether it's public spaces or private entities? And then finally, is it memorable? As Regent Broad was pointing out, we are in a competitive environment, and we have other destinations and higher education institutions that our prospective students can consider. Is this a place that they will form a lasting emotional relationship with that benefits them and this institution through the rest of their life? So let me turn to the Director of Planning to talk a little bit about the processes we use to guide our interaction in planning.
Thank you. I want to begin with a brief conversation about how the master plan approved by this board in 2009 was really conceived of in terms of the nature of the tool that we foresaw at that time. And this list really represents what we had intended in our work on the master plan. Any plan, whether it's a comprehensive plan or a financial plan, broadcasts a message to any constituency that consumes that plan. And clearly, our master plan is based on a series of ideas that are both aspirational but tied to the land that we occupy. So our master plan was conceived in that way, and these were really our goals in terms of how we would use it. So we would reference the plan as we needed to align our investments with a strategic academic vision. We would use our plan to indicate the best overall use, balancing all the various considerations for the existing university-held land, for future development sites, and for recurring investment in our facilities. The plan keeps us oriented. It guides us so that our daily decisions are part of a long-term vision. It supports our fundraising, development of endowments. It provides a global setting, if you will, for how we foresee the campus evolving. And finally, what was perhaps different this time around with this plan was it discusses and promotes positive relationships with the adjacent neighborhoods and with municipalities in the region. Now, on the converse side, what the master plan was not intended to do, again, at the time of its creation, was it did not represent, if you will, the business plan for the institution in a physical space configuration. So it doesn't identify all the potential new building sites. and it doesn't even building needs nor development sites. So that's the first point. Second, it did not prescribe design of new buildings, new landscapes, new systems for utilities, for instance. Finally, it did not define a financial plan. No funding sources or viable phasing were part of our components as we addressed our master planning needs in that time. Now to turn to a little more of the content in the campus master plan. So again, referencing this graphic as you see, which really indicates development sites, special places in our landscape, and focused on those land use and activity patterns. For those of you who have seen the document, it's a series of hierarchy beginning with guiding principles that are really about the core vision for the campus, but it proceeds into what we call plan elements and guidelines. And those elements and guidelines really help us as we make those site-by-site, project-by-project decisions, whether it's major building changes. Renovation, for instance, of Tate is mapped on this graphic. If you can orient yourself relative to the Northrop Auditorium, it shows up in an orange color. It also gives us some direction on the various systems that support daily campus life. So again, examples of that are utility networks, even referencing topics that are critical to new building, for instance, hydrogeology. So what is the ground level condition? We have a lot of groundwater in our geology, our limestone formation at the top of the bluff, and it makes some sites, frankly, non-buildable. And of course, as an urban campus, you know on the West Bank that a lot of the northern part of the West Bank was built on a former gasification plant. There's significant environmental considerations about development of any site of that nature. So it's a multidimensional and multi-layered understanding. It helps us, as I mentioned, on a daily basis as we make those site decisions. The plan also really waded into, I might say, the conversations about our projected horizon for growth. So in 2009, we did anticipate a 10-year horizon for growth. The narrative in the document describes the reasons that were embraced at that time for mapping not only the U's ownership, as you see here in gray, but its potential acquisition, which you see in color. And we believed at that time the purpose was to indicate or reflect that 10-year horizon, to communicate effectively, again, to those constituencies who consume the plan, who own property, who live next to the university. We were attempting to reduce unanticipated demands on those utility systems that I referenced earlier, particularly because we live next to public utilities. And we also intended to reduce distortion in land values for the market around us. We went further in that plan, and we mapped some concepts that were, frankly, fairly conceptual, but we felt it was important to fill in some context for how, again, this campus relates to its surroundings. So first off, the topic you see listed, areas of influence. Really, areas of influence were not to represent university ownership, but to represent adjacencies, lands adjacent to the campus, where land and housing marks were impacted by university activity, and where we clearly saw a need to take a greater role in terms of partnerships and collaboration on specific projects. Secondly, we mapped joint planning areas. And joint planning areas, most of them are numbered here on your graphic, were smaller areas, discrete parcels, if you were, typically immediately adjacent to a university boundary. And almost all of those areas were developed in consultation with the municipality, recognizing that municipalities had long-term visions or goals for those same places. So it was a way to say the university desires to work collaboratively with those groups and to really address land use change so that it's of mutual interest to the university and its neighbors. Finally, I just wanted to spend a moment talking about city and related planning and how the university refers to and makes use of planning efforts that are out in the broader community. So the city of Minneapolis sees the university as a growth center. A growth center is a place that focuses on jobs or housing, and clearly that is what we are. But the city also sees little hubs of activity, if you will, around the fringe of the campus, and that is really the university district. So you see in your graphic here, Stadium Village is mapped, but similarly, Dinkytown is mapped as an activity center. Activity centers are really intended to be 18-hour-a-day places, active street life, a concentration of folks coming and going, a variety of activities. So as the university considered its comprehensive master plan in 2009, we took a hard look at how the city had imagined this piece of its fabric and how the city foresaw it evolving and changing over time. The second image references a neighborhood-led initiative that is occurring around the immediately to the east LRT station, known as the Prospect Park 29th Avenue LRT station. This is a transformative vision that has been led by neighborhood folks. It's really about collecting, again, a variety of mixed uses at a viable density to bring a series of stores, services, et cetera, with a real distinct identity. It's been an interesting and ongoing conversation to understand how the university's activities immediately to the west can complement, infill, amplify the impact that that transformative development may have. Last pieces I wanted to refer to in the upper right hand is the example of the Dinkytown Bike Trail. This is a very interesting example for us here at the campus. The city held a 20-year vision to build a bike trail that would connect from this side of the river, the university side of the river, to points east. And the city had been attempting with due diligence to do that and was frankly ultimately foiled because of a land acquisition question, principally not being able to acquire land from the railroad. And so sort of, I would say at the ultimate hour, the university and the city agreed to conduct a partnership where university land could be used as a shared facility with bike travel. It has made all the difference in the world for the city's ability to connect a regional system. It benefits the campus. We now have a non-street access for cyclists to get to our campus, easy entries at a couple points along the way, and operationally we've figured out a way to make it work. So it's very gratifying for planners to once in a while see projects land on the ground as great examples. The final reference I wanted to make was to the LRT planning that was undertaken with the region as Green Line design advanced, and you will see for yourselves if you are around campus, and you probably may have seen already the degree to which the landscape, the streetscape, and how there is a place now in what was essentially leftover space on Washington Avenue is a very attractive, appealing place for you to spend a few minutes, whether in conversation with someone or on your own. And that, again, was driven by the idea that the campus as a distinct place with some of the highest pedestrian volumes in the entire region. The only place that beats us is Nicollet Mall downtown, which you can imagine on a weekday lunch hour is a busy place. And configuring a physical environment to really meet that need, because that pedestrian traffic, visitors to campus, those 80,000 trips a day, needed a place called out specifically for that function. I will turn the mic over to my colleague, Vice President Pfitzenreuter.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm going to spend a few moments here talking about the tools we currently use to execute on our master planning principles and overall planning for the campus. But I'm going to talk about put that in the context of some of the considerations and constraints that we have historically put on ourselves as we think about the development around the campus. And if you turn just to the next slide, in terms of engaging in the neighborhoods and campus master planning, our primary focus during my tenure here has been, particularly in the last, say, dozen years, has been that our focus has been really driven inside the campus. We've focused our resources, our funds on looking inside the boundaries of the campus that are identified in the master planning document. For housing, for example, our priority has been to make sure that we're housing as many first and second year students as possible. It was my colleague VP Wheelock mentioned earlier that almost 90% of our first year students are housed on campus. That was intentional, purposeful. That was a goal that was set out, and we focused resources and efforts to try to accomplish that. As a result of that, our focus there, we've allowed, with purpose, to allow the private sector, the for-profit market, to meet the rest of the student housing needs for the university. And as a result, you can see the development that has occurred here just in the last 5, 6, 7 years. That's something that the institution decided, not by default. We talked about it even during the Brunick's presidency about that strategy, that we would focus inside the campus and on freshmen and allow the private marketplace to deal with the rest. If you go to the next slide, we've targeted our real estate acquisitions to meet our mission activities, our direct mission activities. We haven't gone out and tried to acquire real estate for something that wasn't a mission purpose, directly linked to either our instruction, research, or outreach mission. We have been opportunistic on real estate acquisitions, but we focused almost exclusively on the edges of the campus. If a parcel became available and we became aware of it, and it was abutting or very close to the campus boundaries, even if it's stepped outside the current campus master plan boundaries, we went after that property. And a recent example would be the Days Inn site. It abutted our existing campus boundary, and it was of strategic interest to the university to make sure that we were involved in what's going on. Historically, we would not take that same position on a real estate acquisition that's 5-6 blocks from the campus. It's always been focused edge of the campus, meet mission activities. Periodically, I want to make sure the board understands that we do, the real estate office, which reports to me, we do periodically go out to the neighborhoods, to parts that, again, typically are on the edges of the campus, and inquire as to whether there are property owners that would like to sell to the university. We do not want to make acquisitions that, again, we don't see a need for. We've not done that in the past. But we have reached out to private landowners to see if they're willing to sell. The purchase of the site that the current ambulatory care facility is going up on is an example where we looked ahead and contacted landowners and negotiated with them to purchase those properties for what was the appraised value, which brings me to another point. We have limited our real estate acquisitions by policy at this institution to the average of appraised values. We rarely bring you a real estate acquisition that would be inordinately out of line with the an independent appraised value of those properties. There are cases, however, around the fringes of the campus, and you can see it, where we don't even learn about those properties coming online because developers are simply contacting owners and coming in there with considerable resources to buy them out. That's not an activity the university has undertaken in the past. And of course, the university does have a tool called eminent domain, but it is rare, and it, of course, always needs to be used for a public purpose. But we do have the authority to use eminent domain as a tool to acquire real estate. If you go to the next slide, we do engage our neighborhoods really through two major groups. The first being the University District Alliance, which was established in 2007, and Senator Poggemiller at the time, who also championed the legislation for TCF Bank Stadium. The legislature commissioned a study, we did the study, and out of that study, this Minnesota University District Alliance was formed. We also, back when we were beginning the TCF Bank Stadium, we created a Stadium Area Advisory Committee, and those two groups are ways that we do engage with the neighborhoods. Another example, and many of you may have, that were on the tour yesterday, heard an example of it as we move through Prospect Park, but we do have student engagement in the neighborhoods. The Office of Student Community Relations offers information to students about living in the local neighborhoods, about landlord and tenant issues and zoning and city ordinances. So we do have an active student engagement with the neighborhoods as well. Going to the next slide, I guess I'm still on here. What principles guide us in developing our engagement strategy? If you go to the next slide, it's been said by the president and by Vice President Wheelock that the university's quality and brand is clearly linked closely with the surrounding community. That's going to be a guiding principle here for us going forward. We understand that, and that's a very important value. We know that the university is not the only entity with a role to play in assuring that our adjacent communities are vibrant, safe, and sustainable. The city of Minneapolis is a key partner. They have the jurisdiction in the neighborhoods that surround the campus, and our partnership with the city of Minneapolis is critical in advancing some of the goals that we have about making sure that we have a safe and vibrant, both residential, commercial area around the campus. We value a mix of housing types. We're going to proactively now establish partnerships with our surrounding communities. We're going to become more active. We're going to collaborate with local units of governments, community members, institutions, and the private sector to represent the university's interests and the interests of our students who live in those communities. How will we know when we've been successful? Some of the outcomes that we're looking for are clearly that our residential and commercial communities surrounding the University of Minneapolis campus will attract students, staff, and researchers and faculty to live, learn, live, play, and work in the area. That's an outcome that we desire here and we're going to work towards. That students, staff, and faculty work, live, and engage in the community in a safe environment that surrounds the campus, and the university will focus and have focused and effective community partnerships to help ensure that the university district is a place where people want to live, work, and recreate. What are our next steps? We're going to be back to you, I believe, hopefully sometime this fall. But between now and then, the next steps that we're going to be taking as a group is we're going to go out and research best practices around the country. There are best practices. Other universities have confronted these issues, and we're going to go do more due diligence about that. As I said, we're going to engage in a broader discussion with our partners and neighbors and come up with some real strategies to move this ball ahead. We're going to review the relevance of the current master plan principles and identify some additional action steps. I don't believe we're planning to completely redo our master plan, but we will go take a look and perhaps see what's relevant and refresh some of it. We are going to work on establishing some outcome-based metrics. Those are going to be tough. I mean, clearly an easy one would be crime, but we don't think that's the entire number of metrics and outcome bases that we should look at. And we're going to, as I said, identify short-term and long-term strategies, and we're going to have to get to work on finding some resources, perhaps both the university and we believe there's resources out there and other foundations in the private sector that can come to bear on some of these issues. And with that, Mr. Chairman, the resolution is before you, and we're here to answer any additional questions.
For process, I'm going to ask for a motion in a second, and then we'll open this up for discussion. There is a resolution in here. Oh, I'm sorry. It is for review, so it'll be noted in the file as a review item. Let's open this up for discussion. Thank you, presenters. Regent Broad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just curious about, I see the City of Minneapolis, Hennepin County, and other local units of government. How do we work with the Metropolitan Council, which adds a little different layer in some parts of our campuses?
Mr. Chair, Regent Broad, that's a great question. Obviously, we've been working closely with them on one particular project for a number of years now, but they do play a critical role both in regional planning and in supporting facilities and services that enhance or control the development in a metropolitan area. We have had some contact with them in the past about some of the grant-making opportunities, but I would defer to the Director of Planning if she wants to elaborate on some specific interactions that we've had in the recent years.
Chair Beeson, Regent Broad, we typically have operated with the Met Council in a planning perspective as we coordinate longer-term planning, so particularly forecasting or projections of population, households, and employment. And so the Metropolitan Council renews that on approximately 10-year basis as they do comprehensive planning reviews. But in addition, if they are doing more regional work in advance, for instance, of LRT, we were coordinated in our estimates of projection. So the example is that we brought them our plans for build-out of the East Gateway District, which had significant new employment, and they said, oh, we're glad you brought it. We had you down for zero growth there. So that's an example of our planning level coordination.
And Mr. Chair, Regent Broad, if I could just add.
Vice President Wheelock.
We do believe that one of the opportunities is really to build on our discussion with Metro Council and Met Transit to talk about the density that is occurring in the residences and the uses in the neighborhoods around the university. It is not entirely clear that either their or our transit plans adequately meet the needs, and we believe that that's an opportunity that we need to explore and plan to do so in the coming months.
Thank you. On the local government partnership issue, I'll make a point. The most important partner is the city of Minneapolis, and it strikes me as you framed out this initiative in the same ways that we've been inwardly focused on improving our campus. I think the city of Minneapolis has been focused on other priority areas, and if you look at the reach of their influence and resources, transportation, traffic, safety, public works, zoning, it's almost like we have to call for a new partnership with the city of Minneapolis. And there's a change of administration down there, and it would be exciting to frame something bigger out with them. I think without them, it's really difficult because of who they are. Let's keep the discussion going here. Any comments or it is that a region for Venus? Yes.
There's several issues I'd like to raise. I suspect we're not going to have a chance to discuss this, and maybe we can have some additional discussion at the meeting we discuss this resolution. There's one point I want to focus on, and I'm going to focus it on you, Fitz, only because you talked about the group that was going to be researching some issues going forwards and looking at some best practices around the country. It strikes me as reflecting on my years in this board, particularly when we had the original sort of debate over where light rail would go, and we've gone through past planning issues. This institution historically underplays and under-evaluates its healthcare delivery mission occurring on this campus. We are operating a facility in the middle of this campus, and that we are seeking from to draw the highest level quaternary care patients in highly specialized regions from people all over a multi-state area. And then we're somehow dreaming that they're all going to stop in the suburbs and take a light rail train and somehow get down into this campus. In the access to our delivery of services and our role of delivery of health care has to take an equal base with our educational mission here. And quite frankly, when we had the original light rail issues, Fairview deferred to us to be the champion of that issue, and historically it has done that on other planning issues. We've got changes in leadership now occurring within the Fairview system. I think as you are looking at other issues around the country, it must be looking at best practices on operating major specialty care facilities in highly dense areas. Because the reality is, I would hate to see this university's mission be choked off by the fact that our patients can't get here in a way that's acceptable to them. And so there's lots of other issues I'd like to talk about, but to me, that's the overwhelming one in this process we need to consider.
Mr. Chair,
Vice President Wheelock.
Regent Frobenius, you raise an excellent point. It's a key part of our mission. We have significant investment of resources in advancing our position in the healthcare industry. We have a very long and important partnership with the Fairview Health System, and it really has been part of our planning, and in fact, it comes out in many different ways, not only about the acquisition of property to advance the development of the ambulatory care center, not only in our positioning around light rail, but even as we plan traffic management around our major events. It's very important to have an uninterrupted access to the facilities that are so important to providing care, important health care to the population that facility and those systems serve. We are thinking about, in partnership with the Academic Health Center, about doing some specific planning on the needs down in that part of our geography, doing a district plan and looking at those needs. And we will continue to advance our interest in better understanding both our current needs and thinking about a rapidly evolving healthcare system and what that might need as we position ourselves for 10 and 20 years out.
Thank you for that question and response. Regent Omari.
Thank you, Chair Beeson. In line with discussing mission, I absolutely agree with that, Regent Frobenius. And there's another important piece, which is the public engagement piece of our mission and how that ties in with teaching and research and highlights the importance of the Office for Public Engagement and how that office is playing a role in this community and engaged effort in thinking about our neighborhoods. And then the other thing that I just want to reiterate that we talked about yesterday and that Vice President Fitzenreuter just mentioned is that we're trying to find what is still relevant in the master plan that we have and build on that rather than throwing it out and starting anew. So I think that's important to highlight. So thank you. None of those are questions.
Thank you, Regent Omari. Regent Allen.
I was going to make 4 points, but Regent Frobenius mentioned the first one and covered it very well, the access. Second one is kind of to be sure we give adequate attention to retaining open space, particularly green space. I think we're pretty well balanced now, but we do tend to nibble away at open space and green space in particular. And I haven't seen that talked about in the plan, and this may be too high a level. Maybe further down as we move into this area, we'll talk about details like that. But I do want to be sure that balancing, you know, the academic needs of putting up new buildings is balanced with the need to maintain a good campus. The final point is a very straightforward one. In the tools, I wonder if we should be thinking more about using right of first refusal, which has good points and bad points to it, but I'll just toss that out.
Thank you, Regent Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick comment on the open space. We do try to balance that as we actually, over the last few decades, have moved away from our need to service so many vehicles, and we've used some of our surface parking. That is not necessarily space you want to recreate in, but it actually is open. It doesn't have the density of buildings. It doesn't have, it promotes sight lines. That's been an interesting development about using some of that space for building. On our campus proper, when we think about green space that our students want to use to either with other students to recreate and to socialize in, or as study spaces during the months of the year when that is provided for on our campus. Those are very important spaces, and you can see as you walk through campus the characteristics of the spaces that are desirable to the students based on where they are. So to promote sight lines and wayfinding through campus, to create some both passive and active uses for students, and to create a place that is memorable and that enhances the brand and reputation and the memorable experience that we are trying to provide for our visitors and for our community. It's a very important part of the plan and challenging to advance given the competing needs for space.
Follow-up question, Regent Allen.
I think that's all true, but my perception is we do tend to nibble away at the green space. The last big discussion we had on it, I think, was when we approved the site for the nanotechnology building, which took a big chunk out of green space. And I think I'd like to see us quantify what we have and what is changing over the years a little bit more than we do.
Regent Devine and then Regent Frobenius.
Thank you, Chairman Beeson. First, just to step back for a moment, I'd like to acknowledge President Kaler's efforts here and his leadership in addressing and bringing this issue to us, and then, you know, for the efforts that have now gone in, that have been put forth to really start to detail out a plan about how we need to look at this. I think yesterday, those of us that sat through the committee meeting were overwhelmed with some of the data, the statistical data, which definitely shows about what the impact of housing has in terms of our graduation, our GPAs, and all of the other factors. That student component of being able to live close to campus, and I'm not just speaking of undergraduate students, but all students, the impact of that is significant in terms of what the outcomes are that we're striving for in our larger mission components that we've got that are formulated right now. This is a very, very important first step, I think, in the elements that we need to be taking apart. And I look at this and I say that our efforts here in this area are going to be long-lasting, and the efforts that we're putting forth here are to be commended. It's been a very important issue for the university to look at, and I think what we had to gather a lot of background here, understand the educational impacts, pull forth the data, and now to move forward with a meaningful plan. And I know that it's on we're talking about having that on the agenda next month as part of our retreat, and I think that that's going to be an important element to concentrate on in terms of what we do going forward. Thank you.
Regent McMillan, were you? Please. He had.
That's fine. You can take whatever.
Regent McMillan and then Regent Frobenius.
Just a comment about understanding the need for the resolution, and I don't want that to be misinterpreted because I can't think of a more important dialogue and set of issues for us to have than this set of issues. And I want to emphasize or reemphasize Regent Frobenius's point about healthcare delivery access. But as I read the resolution, and I know we're not voting on it today, it must be an external stakeholder value because it doesn't do much other than endorse support for this. So we can issue resolutions probably endlessly. We have a lot of capacity to do that, but I'd appreciate understanding the value here. So,
thank you. Regent Frobenius.
I want to go back to Regent Allen's comment about nibbling on grass.
Could you please define grass?
Grass that grows out of the ground.
Nibbling on.
In small straight blades without jagged edges. Okay. It struck me in yesterday's drive around was a real sort of reminder of me that given the density of the evolution that's occurring around us, and we historically still want to maintain some of our open spaces on campus, although we talked about a number of parking lots that were going to be replaced with buildings. It just strikes me that if we're going to maintain our green spaces, and if we're going to grow at all, and we're not going to buy a whole lot of land around us, we got to grow up. And yet, I think you made a statement yesterday during our tour that there's some issues with the cost of some research in high-rise buildings. I think historically this university has had this, I'll use the term fascination, and that's probably pejorative, but we sort of like a campus that's got 3-story brick buildings, nice, and that fit in with the older buildings that we have on campus. And I just question I think we got to really evaluate that core assumption, because I think maintaining some of our open land around it and its livability is an important part. But the only solution that comes to my head is that you're going to have to meet some of this need by plopping a few high-rises here and about on this campus. And I don't know how to introduce that into this process. It looks like part of this process is also having some implications for our own master plan. And so I hope that we begin to look at that issue as we work with the master plan on this.
Vice President Wheelock.
Mr. Chair, Regent Frobenius, we agree, and the reality is that we do need to move in that direction. There are certain parts of our campus where we think that is more suitable. There are certain uses that we have that are better fit for higher density, higher rise buildings. It's hard to do that with laboratory space because it needs to be accessible for emergency responders. It's not perhaps ideal for student housing to go above 4 or 6 floors, but certainly we have a lot of office functions, and we think that that is definitely an opportunity to explore, perhaps not right on the Bluff line, but maybe in developments around TCF Stadium or in certain sites that are served by light rail would make that a logical place to have higher density. So we are very much in agreement that we need to consider that as part of our plan.
Regent Lucas.
Thank you, Chair Beeson. I'll be quick about this. I think what you've done is set the table in a really positive way. I'm really happy that we're looking at this and we'll be focusing it on retreat. However, if I were to do a heat map, like Vice President Klatt does, high on the red chart would be the maintenance of all these buildings. The university, when they construct buildings, tends to think about building for the ages, and the kind of buildings that I see going up perhaps are not built for the ages, and it's to think of thousands of units aging at the same pace puts it in the red zone for me. And I'm not sure how we deal with that, but it's something we should talk to the city of Minneapolis about, and high code enforcement and ongoing attention to that.
Thank you, Regent Lucas. Last question, if we could.
Real positive one. I think, communication of our intentions, which can't be very specific, but in general to the community, are very important. And I really like the way you've taken the area and divided into holdings, sensitive areas, joint planning areas, and areas of influence. I think that's a really good way of laying things out.
Thank you. Thank you very much, presenters. This was really an excellent presentation. Committee chairs, I'd ask you to be very brief, if you could, for this month on the report of your committee activities, starting with Regent Allen on facilities. Speaking of facilities.
Good. First action item we took care of earlier on the capital. We supported the capital improvement budget. Second action item, we recommended for approval the sale of 18-plus acres of land in Carver County near the Arboretum. That's in conjunction with another 52 acres almost that was proposed for sale. And those are mechanisms for funding the acquisition of 78 acres. I move approval of the sale of the 18.13 acres of land in Carver County.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion on the disposition of land? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? Motion carries.
Non-action items, we had a very good discussion on several topics, including facilities, planning, and assumptions, much of which we've talked about here. But in particular, how do we find the right space and the right places for the right needs? We also had a very strong discussion, which Regent, who somebody referred to it, I think it was Tom, in fact, referred to the significant information about the importance of student housing on GPAs and retention rates and graduation rates. A lot of real good detailed information there. I'll just comment, one of the things that I get out of that kind of a presentation is how much our faculty and staff know about what they're doing that we don't know, but it's nice to know that they know all of that they're doing. I thought it was a very excellent presentation. We also had a very good discussion on the role of information technology, and in fact, a very comforting one on to what extent we are supporting our administrative people, and particularly our faculty, with the right technology. That's an ongoing issue as technology advances, but we seem to be doing some very good things right now. Information items, we looked at the capital planning project management semi-annual report that is submitted to us for oversight. I abbreviated quite a bit, but as you asked.
Thank you, Regent Allen. Regent Frobenius, Committee on Faculty and Staff.
Thank you very much, Chair Beeson. Under consent report, the committee unanimously recommends approval of the consent report, which includes 3 items. Number 1, appointment of Dr. Brian Burr as CFAN's Dean. Number 2, appointment of the Minnesota Landscape Arboretum Foundation trustees. And number 3, conferral of tenure for new outside hires. I move adoption of the consent report.
There is a motion. Is there a second? Second. There is a second. Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? Approved. And congratulations to Dr. Viewers.
Important. That was an important item. Most of the committee's time was spent on foundational items related to employee benefits, including a benefits overview as part of our review of total compensation. As part of our discussion, the committee noted a strong desire to spend time in future meetings on the policy side of benefits, with a longer-term focus of refining the benefits and total compensation philosophy and goals for the institution. We are mindful that our role is to outline philosophy and set policy that allows administration freedom to act, but still to set some guidance in an organization where one size doesn't fit all, and different parts of the organization may have to behave slightly differently. The committee also received its annual university plan health insurance update, which we continue to believe we're doing well with, and a report on retirement program trends. Mr. Chair, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Regent Frobenius. Regent McMillan, report of the Finance Committee.
Thank you, Chair Beeson. Like facilities, our major action items, the fiscal year 14 operating and capital budgets were already taken care of. In the discussion item category, a very important and lengthy conversation around long-range financial planning, which we've touched upon today, the importance of some of that. If you take a look at the materials, you'll see how the Fitz's team is putting together the key assumptions around revenue and spending, and how we go forward with different revenue scenarios to look out through 2019 is what we might be facing. So I think a very sophisticated and important tool that'll continue to be part of our dialogue. We also spent quite a bit of time on the enterprise system upgrade discussion, We had our Executive Director, Dennis Wenzel there, Program Director Dennis Wenzel, and VP Scott Studham, who gave us their perspective on that project. Things are going well, and a big go-live date coming up here in mid-February for that consequential and transformational effort. Information items, quarterly investment advisory, quarterly asset management reports, and a debt management advisory committee report, and then a consent agenda, which you have in the materials as well, and that is an action item that I need to move for the board.
That is a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carries. Regent McMillan. That concludes.
That's it. Sorry.
Concludes your report. Thank you. I'm going to ask Regent Broad to jump. We're going to move ahead in your time constraints on reporting your committee for audit.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Audit Committee met. We have one action item under the consent report. The committee unanimously recommends the approval to engage Deloitte Consulting to provide advisory services to the University Enterprise Asset Management Project. The engagement is for the establishment and preliminary planning phase of the project. The fees are estimated to be $318,000, which includes a 10% contingency plus expenses estimated at $37,000. The committee felt that this engagement, and the reason it was before the Audit Committee was to assess this. The committee felt that the engagement would not impair Deloitte's independence with respect to their role as our independent external auditor. I move adoption of the consent report.
Second.
There is a motion and second. Is there any discussion on that? Would all those in favor say aye?
Aye.
Aye. Against? Motion carries. Regent Broad.
Mr. Chairman, we also had a number of discussion items in the committee, one of which was the internal audit plan. The Audit Committee discussed the internal audit plan. The plan is risk-based and continues to reflect the principles and integrated frameworks for internal control. The plan includes 24 audits of the university processes, units, and systems. We also discussed the internal audit, or got an internal audit update from Associate Vice President Klatt. And then we also had a conversation around an updated risk profile for the Office for Research the Vice President for Research, Brian Herman. One of the things that was interesting in that conversation, there was many of them interesting, but one of which I wanted to point out was that the university has created 52 new companies as an outgrowth of the research being performed at this institution. And then, Mr. Chairman, we also received an information item, or under information items received the semi-annual controller's report, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Regent Broad. Regent Simmons, Committee on Academic and Student Affairs.
Chair Beeson, I would appreciate it if the Vice Chair of the committee, Regent Cohen, would deliver our report. I had to absent myself from the committee.
Thank you. Regent Cohen.
Yes, thank you, Chair Beeson. The action item, the committee unanimously recommends approval of the consent report, which was mostly program changes for academic programs. I move adoption of the consent report.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Regent Cohen.
We had two really interesting items. One was strategic planning, and the panel discussed the strategic plan. Without going into the details, I will just say that our committee was so impressed by the panelists, most of whom were faculty members, but a student also, and an administrator, whose honesty, their enthusiasm, their ideas, and their energy, there was a lot of that around this crucial planning process, and we look forward to hearing more from them as the process continues. The other item was health and wellness assessment, and the committee heard an update on the current review of Boynton Health Service, which is one of the largest student health centers in the nation, and its relationship to the university's health science programs. There was a panel which included the Boynton Health Service, the Student Services, and UMP, and again, it was a really illuminating panel, and we look forward to hearing more about the specific actions stemming from this review. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Regent Cohen. The Committee on Litigation Review. The committee did meet on June 12, 2014. A resolution was considered and approved that authorized the closing of that meeting. In a closed meeting, a discussion was held of matters that are subject to attorney-client privileged. Committee on Academic Medicine did not meet this month.
That's right.
Regent Cohen, thank you. Any old business today before the board? New business? I'll call the meeting adjourned. Thank you and enjoy the weekend.